Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, members of the public. Today is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Briggs, Kalanche, Shields, Sobroff, Southers are present, and we have a quorum. Mr. President?
We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be a speaker in this room will go first. Then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. For those of you in the room, please submit a speaker card to one of the officers nearby. If you're on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand. Those attending in person are reminded that they may not disrupt this meeting and that disruption may be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you'll be provided with only 1 warning to cease such behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from this meeting. At this time, before we go to item 1 on the agenda, Commissioner Sobroff has a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of someone who cared deeply about Los Angeles, everyone in Los Angeles, and this police department. Bert Bachman was a commissioner on the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners for a total of 16 years. He was a commissioner for 6 years and then came back, and when the charter said a 10-year maximum, served that full-time period. He was a gentleman and a gentleman, and cared deeply about the people of Los Angeles. I went to his office one time over at Galpin Motors, and the one thing he had on his desk was the badge in a Lucite case. He was very proud of it. So we lost a great Angelino, and I wanted to acknowledge that. I think, Chief, that you knew Bert, and I thought it'd be important to mention his name today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Chief Moore.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. Tiefenk. Commissioner Sobroff, thank you for your taking a moment to recognize an individual who I believe was an absolute icon, not just of the San Fernando Valley, but all of Los Angeles, Bert Bachman, who unfortunately passed away on Friday, about 3:30 in the afternoon, actually 2 years to the day that we lost Jane Bachman, his wife, to pancreatic cancer. Bert has his tenure with the Los Angeles Police Department as a commissioner, his tenure in the San Fernando Valley as a leader that was a self-made man, a person who came and established a small dealership after working for another individual there and built that into what is today recognized as a conglomeration of businesses across, well recognized and respected across America. But importantly, most important was not his business acumen, though he was a great leader and loved his employees and was well loved by his employees, but by how much he cared to be an Angelino. I spoke with him on numerous occasions. Alan Scobin, former vice president of the commission here, as his legal counsel, the three of us have spoken many times over the last more than 2 decades about matters of public safety and his enduring support for not just this department, but the men and women of it. He was a kind individual who respected the professionalism of our people and their dedication. He called it straight. When we got it wrong, he would point that out. But often he would also rally to our defense when others he felt were unfairly targeting an action or some circumstance going on. This week, I also want to recognize on Saturday, the following day, tragically, we lost a police officer who worked our training division. He was a 28-year veteran. Paul On suffered some type of unknown, at this point, medical emergency. The examination of his remains and his circumstances of his death are still very much an open question. We do believe that it is a medical emergency, that there was no crime or other incidents involved in his passing. He was a respected individual who worked training division in the firearms section, and a man that we'll miss, and we will provide our information to the commission in the days ahead as more information is learned. On a more positive conversation, yesterday was May Day in here, not just here, but across the world. And we saw in Los Angeles a series of demonstrations, both permitted and otherwise, that were all peaceful, conducted in a manner that expressed varying viewpoints, that the department, I was happy to report, along with the Department of Transportation, was happy to facilitate and ensure the safety of everyone involved. Yesterday also was an eventful day with 2 striking instances I want to cover briefly. One, in a matter to ask for the public's help. And about the same time as some of these demonstrations were going on, there was an arrest of an individual about 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the area of Morton Avenue and Echo Park. That's in the Elysian Park area. There, a male Hispanic, 37 years of age, whose name has a complexity that I'm going to spell it out. First name is Diosdado. Last name is Tzintzunespindo. This individual became engaged in a series of assaults with his vehicle on multiple victims throughout the Elysian Park and Chinatown areas of Los Angeles. More than 13 victims have been identified to date, including a department employee who was coming back to her car on a lunch break, as well as a DWP employee. I'm grateful that none of the victims were seriously injured, and we'll be releasing a press statement later this morning with a picture of the suspect's vehicle, which was a 2004 Nissan Itera SUV, silver in color. And we're asking for the public's help and assistance because over about a 2-hour period of time, it appears that this individual purposely rammed multiple cars who went about their day, sometimes parked at curbs and other times parked in traffic lanes or moving about the city. He was booked for assault with a deadly weapon. We have taken a statement from him. His bail is $440,000, and we'll continue to investigate the circumstance and bring it to the public's attention because given the traffic flows that were going on in the areas in which he moved about, we believe that it's entirely possible that there may be other victims of a similar assault. Yesterday at about 4:25, transitioning to an incident that happened at the Los Angeles, outside the front area of the Los Angeles High School, involving 2 individuals, male Hispanics, 15 and 16 years of age respectively, which were apparently attacked by as many as 10 male Hispanics ranging in age from 15 to 20. These attacks resulted in stab wounds to their upper back, right arm, right leg. These injuries resulted in them being transported to a nearby hospital where they are in stable condition and they are expected to survive. Initial Los Angeles Unified School District police responded, and then they were backed up and the investigation is now the domain of the Wilshire area. And what we've determined at this point is that there were 2 vehicles involved at a minimum, a black Toyota and a red Cadillac. We believe we have the red Cadillac in custody. Follow-up investigations by detectives identified that vehicle as well as a second vehicle that was possibly involved. And over the course of their investigation, we have detained 3 individuals that we believed had some aspect of involvement in this. None of them attended the LA High School. One of them is 14 years of age, a male Hispanic, and the second one is 17 years of age, a male Hispanic. The 17-year-old was arrested for possession of a concealed weapon, a firearm, in a vehicle. And our investigation has also recovered 2 knives and 2 handguns. So our interviews involving everyone involved in this continues. I want to thank the Los Angeles Unified School District, both the administrators as well as the superintendent and the Los Angeles Unified School District Police, who are working very closely alongside of us. There's much more work to be done here. We don't yet to determine the motivation for this or what precipitated this violence. We have instituted additional patrols at the school for both before and after school, and LA Unified School District is working with counselors to ensure that they are present for the students that are there as well as the staff. There were no categorical uses of force during this period of time, which means that our officer-involved shootings remain at 7 versus 6 for the same period last year. 4 fatals and 2 were the number of fatals last year at this time. Regarding our crime picture, we continue to see reductions in violent crime in all categories. We have a 23% reduction in homicides, 16% reduction in robberies, and a 6.5% reduction in aggravated assaults. Overall, our total violent crime is down 10.7%. That's just under 1,100 fewer violent crimes. Over a period of time going back to 2019, we now stand at a 1.8% reduction overall. Our challenges continue to be where we have a 12% increase in homicides going back to 2019, and a 22% increase in shots fired, and a 21% increase in victim shots. So we're seeing reductions this year versus the last few years in violence, as well as in the majority of our property crimes. However, when we go back to the pre-COVID years, we're tracking that information very closely in our efforts to working with our community, working with all the stakeholders, our strategies, our partners, to regain, if you will, those decades-low crime numbers that we experienced just a few short 3 years ago. On the personnel strength, we saw an increase of 18 personnel because of a new academy class, and that stands at 9,112, our personnel strength in the sworn ranks. And our civilian professionals stand at 2,622, which is 3 lower than I reported in my last report. That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to first ask Commissioner Kalanche whether or not she has any questions for Chief Moore. Thank you. Commissioner Sobroff, any questions for Chief?
Just one comment. Chief, last Friday at 2 o'clock was the citywide memorial service for former Mayor Dick Reardon. The city, the mayor, and prior mayors attended, and I would summarize it by saying, did the family proud. It was a beautiful service, and I wanted to say thanks to not only you, but the other the officers who volunteered their time to participate in that service. The presentation of the flag by the officer to the mayor, by the mayor to Mrs. Reardon, was a wonderful tribute to a wonderful guy, and I wanted to thank you and the department and everyone who attended.
It was our honor to be there. It was a fitting tribute to a tremendous leader.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Commissioner Suthers.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Shields.
No questions. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. At this time, we're going to go to public comment. Madam Secretary.
Our first speaker is Jason Reedy on all items.
go to the next speaker and recall him when he returns.
Jonathan Foster for 3 minutes.
There you go.
There were 2 weeks of no OIS plus this week. That's 3 weeks. That's awesome. Makes me smile. But when the suspect crosses the line, right, that's out the window. So as soon as the suspect does something, and this is why I keep talking about the body armor, because we don't know who has a fake gun or a vape pen. Shot a veteran with a vape pen. That's can't believe that. So wanted to go over this one. The city council gets $212 a salary, $212,000 a year, which is disgusting. So this is why I think the LAPD should make, what they make. I mean, those people are practically worthless as far as I'm concerned. Now, the officer that passed away, Baldemar Sandoval, I said that he might have been on a cell phone. I wondered if he was sleep deprived. Did he fall asleep at the wheel, or was he looking at the cell phone? That's what I suspect, right? I would hope he wasn't sleep deprived. So, one of the things to speak about today, I've got so many things I'd like to go over, but nothing done here is ever going to change what needs to change. Do you know that? We could speak for hours, and everything that we speak of here is never going to change anything, okay? It can't be spoken of here because it's off topic, right? So we're all wasting our time. And for why crime? Why is there crime? Why? You might know why there's crime. There's different mental illnesses, like a sociopath. Not exactly a mental illness being a sociopath, but we know that it is. There's many types of behaviors like this, but we can't address this here. Everything that creates crime, we cannot take, because he's going to go off topic. So it just doesn't matter. Officers 1s, 2s, and 3s, whatever we speak about here, they're not in here listening. We're only speaking to you. Now, I support the LAPD, right? So it's great. We got no OISs. I don't support defund and abolish. I don't support that. But what I also, officers being prosecuted cannot protect themselves from the events. So I came up with a new acronym, the LAPD, IOS, MOUs, ACR reports, BOPCs, PhDs, and all this stuff. And I came up with this as it's an OOPM, out of policy murder. Out of policy murder, an OOPM. OOPM, oop, and then they turn into murder, right? So it pains me deeply, that these officers, when they create these OOPMs, that they have to be prosecuted. You're not prosecuting them, and that's the problem, is you are the problem. You are the problem.
Next over Zoom, we have Angelina.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
We want more police, not less. I say this every single time I call in. I'm very connected to my community in Sunland, Tahunga, and people are just not happy with the level of police help they're getting. They call the non-emergency number and they wait for hours to get through, or they never get through because they eventually hang up because they're so frustrated and hopeless. Or they actually call 911 and have to wait an hour before police come to help. For example, there's a 72-year-old man in Sunland who had to board up all of his windows with plywood recently because a young transient male keeps breaking his windows, tries to kick in his front door, and assaults this elderly man. Why does he have to live like a prisoner in his own home? And I speak with the managers at Vaughn's, and they say teenagers steal the liquor there daily and drink it in the adjacent park, which ironically happens to be on the same grounds as Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez's office building. The Vaughn's managers say it takes police 1 hour, and by that time the kids are long gone. But if the Vaughn's and La Crescenta call 911, it only takes 2 minutes because it's Glendale Police Department that shows up. So why is it so unsafe in Los Angeles while cities that are adjacent are so much safer? Glendale, Burbank, Santa Clarita, the parents take their kids to those parks instead, to those libraries. Why? It's because of the woke policies that are not working in Los Angeles. We need to change the O in the word woke and change it to an A. And instead of being woke, you need to wake up. I saw signs at BLM rallies, and a common one was Cuck 12. I had no clue what that meant, so I had to look it up. Now, 12 means police, and I don't think it's appropriate to say that to our police officers who wake up each day and put on their uniforms. But I think the leadership, including Chief Moore, maybe that word would be appropriate because your allegiance is to the city council, including Monica, and yet they are cheating on you. And the way you pander to them is not acceptable. And what you did do to your own children, meaning the police officers, is not acceptable. We're not going to forget what you did to Captain Smith or to Officer Contreras. We're not going to forget about it. So, Monica might want to put these speed feedback signs instead of giving money to police. But guess what? Those speed feedback signs don't even turn on. Every day I pass by them and it's totally blank. So they're spending all this money to things that don't even work and not giving money to you guys. One idea is, can we bring back a substation to Sunland Park? The Pacoima station is way too far for these officers to drive back and forth from. The officers can write their reports there. Their presence will be there at the park. At that Sunland Park, there's men there in their 20s. Okay, it's in the middle of a regular work day. They're just hanging out there, smoke.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jason Reedy. On all items.
Fuck 12. Okay, so last week, during my line of questioning of Chief Moore, he revealed that Diego Jose Miranda Lopez, the LAPD pig who was arrested for raping a child, was suspected of being involved in other similar occasions. This revelation came when I asked a simple question if it was standard for this department to release the photo of a person arrested for rape. Did you not say that? That's what you fucking said. Check the video. If Diego had been suspected of being involved in similar occasions, why would the LAPD be hiding his photo from the public? If this serial rapist is running around the community, his photo should be out there to help others come forward, right? So why does your department still keeping that photo secret? Would you like to say? No, you wouldn't. So I'm seeing a presentation today on senior lead officers who white supremacists like Bill Bratton call the problem solvers in their community. Fun fact, senior lead officers are more likely to have been involved in a shooting than rank and file within this department. Let's highlight some of those senior lead officers, or SLOs as you like to call them. You have Haitham Sabra, who murdered Mark Miles in 2012, that is stationed between the public and politicians inside of city council chambers. You have SLO Sean Dinse, who is a QAnon supporter. You've got SLO Frank Martinez, who murdered Charlie Africa and was in attendance for its KDL's tree lighting event in Pershing Square. You have Brent Hayhoe, who used to be a senior lead officer out of Metro, who shot a black father, an Air Force veteran by the name of Jermaine Pettit, last summer. Are you hazy on the details on that one? He essentially did a drive-by shooting in a black residential neighborhood and almost killed Jermaine. You've got SLO Patty Patique, whose Twitter likes include election conspiracies, the Stop the Steal Trump rally on January 6th, anti-vax conspiracies, and more. Let's see if any of that information makes its way into the presentation today. Now, last week, I asked Steve if he cared about children, and you said, and I quote, "If you did, you wouldn't have yours here," and nodded your head when I asked if my child was in danger at LAPD headquarters. 2 hours later, Steve decided to say it made him sick that I bring my baby to meetings, and that's not what a parent should be doing with their child. So you had the nerve to question whether my baby was safe with quote-unquote parents that know what they're doing with their child. I know exactly what I'm fucking doing with my child. If I was a white lady with a baby praising this department, you wouldn't have said that fucking bullshit. And I'm raising my child against this system, against the LAPD, against white supremacy. And so again, what does it say about you that you only opened your mouth to critique a black father, but not a child rapist, not a literal Nazi that was displaying a swastika as he spoke in front of this commission? Oh, but it's because you rep those child rapists. You rep those Nazis. You rep white supremacy. Nothing to say, Steve? Nothing to say, Steve? Steve Sobroff,
Thank you, Mr.
you have
Briggs.
anything to say?
Next, we have caller ending 1223.
Good morning to the panel.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay. I would just like to ask a question in regards to this neuroscience that's being used to potentially predict behavioral problems attributed to crime being committed. Psychological biobehavioral instruments. This is a problem. Techniques being used may cause behavior issues for this research and study. If the testing is to stop the problem, you must fully understand the problem. To create the problem, study on how to create it, and then what techniques and technology to use to control the problem. Guns are not the problem. The minds behind the guns is the problem. And we have technology that can alter people's thoughts. U.S. patents, there's 93 U.S. patents that alter a person's thoughts from a distance, remotely, emotional states, stuff like that. There is, I'm gonna just give you two. A U.S. patent, DE or Delta Echo 102-534-33A for Alpha 1. Thought transmission unit that sends modulated electromagnetic wave beams over long distances to a human receiver to influence the thoughts, actions, or perceptions, with or without consent. This is a problem. Another one, U.S. patent 6219657, B as in Bravo 1, device and method for creation of emotions. There are people dedicated to creating random shooters. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this or you don't care. This is a huge problem, though. Why is this only a problem in America when guns have been around for years? This is a huge problem. There's a protocol that's been executed. I happen to know people that are involved in this. It would be advantageous for me to meet with somebody to share the information that I have, to show you the evidence that I have. I don't understand why nobody wants to do that when random shooting is just continuing to escalate. Something needs to be done about this. The guns don't just come alive and just shoot people randomly. You know, there's people behind the guns. There's the mind that decides that they're going to do this.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Gina Viola for 3 minutes.
One, two, and 4A. So the irony of this room is unparalleled. While the country clamors for accountability, you put on this clown show week after week after week. This room, this meeting, is what turned me into a full-fledged abolitionist. Sitting through these meetings, listening to the discrepancies week after week as you report numbers that suit your narrative. When you need crime to be down, crime is down. When you need crime to be up, crime is up. It's such manipulation, and the fact that the press just parrots what you say in this room is just, they have their own things to answer for. I learned that there is no fairness or justice being done in our city where the Los Angeles Police Department is concerned, and I learned that right here in this room, and you five are absolutely complicit in this. How can you, five of you, sit alongside a commissioner so blatantly anti-black? How? How is it that the rest of you let this man dog whistle anti-black rhetoric against a black child and father last week. None of you said anything. None of you called him out on it. I don't remember him ever stating it was gross to bring your children when those children were white. And I've been coming to these meetings for years. I've seen lots of children in these meetings for years. Suddenly it's gross. It's gross when city council calls it out against this black father, and now you're parroting it too? Soboroff needs to resign immediately. And the four of you, if you are worth anything, need to demand that that happens. In a city that is so anti-black, in a city that is terrorizing black neighborhoods, black people are being killed by police all the time in this city. And this man gets to sit and talk about a black father and child in the meeting while the rest of you listen? Were you nodding your heads in agreement? Because that's what it feels like from where I'm sitting. Ugh. You didn't make these statements when the children were white, Soboroff. You did not. You see the difference? You use the word gross. Let me tell you what's gross. You are. You're gross, and the rest of you are gross. Because what goes on in this room is indicative of how this department rains terror down on the city. The five of you are the watchdogs of white supremacy in this city. That's exactly what you are, the rubber stamp body that means absolutely nothing. You claim it's oversight. It's anything but. You spend just way too much time talking about the respectability you demand inside this room. That's not what this room is for. And if that's what you think this room is for, you need to step down too, Briggs. This isn't about being respectable. This is about accountability and transparency, which you have absolutely none of. None of you do. Bye, fuckers.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first off, good morning. I'm glad I was selected to speak. I support his report. I also support agenda items 3A and 4B. It's very important that people understand that the senior lead officer program, the neighborhood prosecutor program, and the community all work together, and it's important to stay that way. I also want to share support for our air support division. I know that the controller is looking at cutting budget, and it shouldn't be cut. It's very, very important to keep it. And with that, I also offer my condolences to the Reardon family and to the Sandoval family, his wife and his twin boys. I thank you, and everyone stay healthy and safe, and I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Megan Wiles. For 3 minutes.
Good morning. I just wanted to also address the ridiculous idea that this is where citizens can come to hold the police accountable. Just the fact that it's police headquarters, it's incredibly intimidating to be here. In the middle of the workday at 9:30 in the morning, so few people can actually make this. There are more police officers in this room than citizens. And with the horrific stories that come out of this department about the number of your officers that rape and assault, and the number of times that those rapes and assaults are covered up, that those people retire with full pensions, it is terrifying to be in here right now. You never ask anything of substance. You only comment to compliment Chief Moore, ask him questions about marketing. And then when people do come to actually bring up the stuff that matters, they come all the way down here and you don't give them the opportunity to speak. 45 minutes is not enough time. I would like to remind Commissioner Kalanche about her comment that everybody who shows up should get the chance to speak. And I would want to add that anybody who shows up on Zoom should also get the chance to speak. I just also want to condemn Commissioner Soboroff's comments towards the Black father in this room. Those comments sounded threatening from where I was sitting. It was a fucked up and racist thing to say. You should, at a minimum, apologize, give some kind of explanation for it, and I think you should step down. And I just can't believe none of you are saying anything about how inappropriate that was for him to say that.
They agree. Yeah. Silence is complicity.
Chief Moore, you did say that Diego Jose Miranda was being investigated for other incidents. I was sitting right here. I heard it too.
Hey, Steve, shut the fuck up and listen, asshole. Talk about inappropriate.
To close, I just want to send my condolences to the families of the victim of Diego Jose Miranda and the victims of the over 200 kids that were abused by an administrator with the Santa Monica Police Activities League, an organization started by Mr. Southers, I believe. Might be a good thing to ask about, make a comment about. Over 200 kids abused in a program that you started. Thank you.
They can't rubber stamp that, Megan.
Next, we have P. Miller.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Yes, 2, 3, and 4B.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners, Chief. Been a longtime advocate for community policing and senior lead officers. For those who may not know firsthand, it's about prevention, partnership, and problem solving. And communities in all 21 divisions look to our senior lead officers, or SLOs, to engage us, guide us, and inform us so that we may take personal responsibility for our own safety as well as our communities. And that comes in many forms of interactions, whether it's neighborhood watch or business watch, coffee with a cop, holiday toy giveaways, developing numerous youth programs and cadets, and hosting Lady Beware or safety workshops. The senior leads put a face and a personality to the LAPD. The guidance of SLOs in the community is critical. Why? Because they bring a measured calm to many interactions and often resolve a situation before it escalates into a 911 call. It's really hard to graph the statistics of prevention. SLOs have the pulse of the community, see the trends happening, and are the point person to coordinate other officers and agencies to work together on an issue in their basic car areas. They actually promote the concept of shared responsibility. Commissioners, commanding officers, they come and they go in divisions, but a dedicated SLO provides trust and continuity to community members, and that counts for a great deal. It is priceless. Divisional SLOs were the inspiration for the development of the Neighborhood Prosecutor Program, originally under City Attorney Delgadillo and expanded under City Attorney Fewer. SLOs have inspired other police departments across the nation and laid the groundwork that led to the LAPD's community safety partnerships established in specific areas. So too, the senior lead officers out there, continue to do your great work. We appreciate you, respect you, and we want you as part of our communities throughout Los Angeles. And to the chief, the website is certainly much improved and user-friendly. Commissioners, regarding the female recruit outreach, a fair and level playing field and qualified candidates should be the guiding principle always for new hires for the LAPD. Quality, not quota. And in closing, Commissioner Bert Bachman, highly engaged with the community and with cops. He and fellow commissioners Ochi, Caruso, Cunningham, and Saucedo always conducted themselves with class and dignity, and he will be missed. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Zach Sherwin on all items.
So great to hear the civilian populace calling in. Commissioner Briggs, such a classy move to literally roll your eyes when speakers leave the dais. There are too many armed officers in this room. It dwarfs the number of community members who are here. I also want to comment on the fact that despite Commissioner Kalanche saying in public several weeks ago that you should take up the issue of making it the case that everybody who comes down in person to give comment should get to do so, clearly that suggestion did not meet with a warm reception with the rest of the members of the commission. But it's important for us to call it out because that moment was like an actual transparent, real moment that happened in front of people, immediately stifled and, buried under the undertow of institutional bullshit that you guys engage in week after week, the sham that is this commission. Commissioner Shields, you proud to be here? Yeah, just wanted to take a minute to call it out. It is extremely inappropriate for a member of this commission to make any comments about a member of the public's parenting. Despite your position of power, your fragility is evident in making such a comment. And to talk about an adult's conduct around a child on the exact same week when you collectively and individually kept your mouth shut about a police officer literally raping a child, when, I will add, there was a stand-up cardboard cutout in the lobby honoring Child Abuse Prevention Month. The irony is unbelievable. And so then to pile on top of that, a member of this commission that purports to be the citizen's voice in police affairs, commenting on someone's parenting style while not even mentioning a police officer raping a child. Like, when you hear that set of sentences, how are you able to reconcile that as a human with like continuing to perform your duties here, go about the rest of your days, sleep at night? It's difficult to imagine, and yet that's who's in charge. That's who's responsible for the police oversight in this city. We didn't hear a peep from you about the child rape cop. Later that day, a story did break in the LA Times about a Santa Monica police employee molesting more than 200 kids. It turns out he was a volunteer for the Santa Monica Police Activities League, which Commissioner Suthers helped create. Imagine having gotten out in front of that, Commissioner. Imagine taking an opportunity after I'm done commenting to weigh in or say anything about that. No comment about a story that came out that says half of people injured in LAPD pursuits are bystanders, report says. That was in the Times since last week's meeting. Something the public might be interested in hearing this Oversight Commission's thoughts on, and yet you sit there silently without comment. Commissioner Kalanche is nodding as if I'm saying something impactful. What would you do with that nod, Commissioner? Why is it the case that you force the public to speak before the agenda items? Why do you refuse week after week to explain why it is not the case? To not explain why it's the case. And with that, I'll yield the rest of my time to today's meeting.
Next, we have Jamie Cusick.
Hi, all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, I'd like to talk about a news release from last Thursday, the 27th. Suspect arrested for mayhem on MTA Red Line. This document is full of extremely suspicious euphemisms, not to mention a lot of overtly baffling inconsistencies that I think would cause any even remotely conscientious ethical oversight board to have a lot of follow-up questions and comments. Since there doesn't actually happen to be an even remotely conscientious ethical oversight board in the vicinity, I'll do my best. Okay, so in this report, it says that officers, an unknown number of officers, approached a male on board the Metro Red Line who was in possession of narcotic paraphernalia. Doesn't say how they knew that that person had narcotic paraphernalia. Interesting. Okay, the officers approached the suspect and, quote, escorted him off the train pending a narcotic investigation. Then it goes on, after the suspect was escorted off the train, the suspect became violent and fought with the officers, resulting in a use of force. During the use of force, a portion of the sergeant's finger was bitten off by the suspect. This goes on, but let's just look at all this. Okay, so you have at least 2 officers, could be 3 or 4 or 5. You guys don't feel like announcing that, cool. But even if it's just 2 officers, they're coming up to this person fucking armed to the teeth with your absurd, expensive military-grade weapons that cost us $8 million a day. I cannot imagine anything more terrifying and more threatening. And I can guarantee you that if this person, this suspect, had any kind of weapon, it would be listed here. We all know you guys feel free to describe pretty much any item as a weapon. So we can certainly assume that not only they are unarmed, they probably don't even have a backpack on. Anyway, these officers escorted that person off the train. Wow, what a nice, gentle way to describe what could be any type of violent action. Again, unspecified, grabbing the person, dragging them, And even if I highly fucking doubt this, even if you guys didn't actually touch the person, it's an act of violence that police officers were on the train in the first place. The presence of officers anywhere, say in this room, for example, is not only traumatizing for many people who've personally experienced their brutality, but it's also violent because an on-duty, on-the-clock, wage-earning cop is stealing the resources from our communities that will actually keep us safe. Fuck you. For going on to say in this report that after they were escorted off the train, the suspect became violent and fought with the officers, resulting in a use of force. The suspect is not described as having been harming anyone or bothering anyone or even making any sound prior to any of this. The implication that they were the one who introduced violence to the situation is ridiculous and it's enraging. And then you guys are trying to say that the suspect fought with the officers. No, you do not fight with multiple armed people who have come up to you out of nowhere for no valid reason and are attempting to take you away with them to some unknown place. You're not fighting with them. You are fighting to stay alive. This is ridiculous. Get cops off public transport. I'm glad that the finger got bitten off. That was the least that.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Hamid Khan on all items.
So let's just hear, how many parents in the room? A lot of parents in the room, and some of those wouldn't want to admit. Let's just hear what this fucker said.
When that guy comes here holding his kid, that's what I'm talking about. That's not what a parent should be doing with their kid. I wasn't talking about being safe with cops here. I'm talking about being safe with parents that know what they're doing with their children. And it makes me sick to see that kind of stuff. And a lot of the...
You're the most fucking vulgar motherfucker that I have seen ever. Like, you know, just being a parent, how can you even say this kind of shit? How can you even say this kind of shit, you motherfucking racist piece of shit? And of course, this is exactly what white privilege is. The claim to dehumanize, to degrade, and completely criminalize a child. It starts with a fucking child. The vulgarity of that, the sheer vulgarity of that. And we'll continue to hound you, you motherfucker. You ain't going anywhere because this is something that you don't come after children. You don't come after children. The cruelty is just absolutely just so fucked up in this space. Let's now talk about the lies of this man, Moore, and let's talk about Watch the Watchers a little bit, right? So, you may have read that they'd started destroying those documents from public records on his orders, going back to 2019. 9 of those portals that they had posted information themselves. But this is nothing new. This is not a moment in time. It's a continuation of history. So guess what? We found an article from 1976 in the LA Times that after the Pitchess decision was made in the Supreme Court, and people who don't know, a Pitchess motion is a motion that defendants can file to find out if there's officers' aggression in the history and misconduct and all of this shit. The history goes that the city attorney and the LAPD came together and physically destroyed 4 tons. 4 tons of documents, that's an LA Times report, 4 tons of documents that would have made these people complicit and that would have exposed the violence and the aggression of the cops. The DA then went after the city attorney. This is from 1976. Let's talk about the Watch the Watcher website. In 1998, the LAPD, with a lot of just gusto, released the lapdonline.org, their website. And what did they do? They published 160 photos of SLO's senior lead officers. The LAPPL sued them for publishing them, and guess else who they sued? This is from the LA News Weekly article in 1998. They sued killercop.coms. The same fucking website that they started the lawsuit again in 2023. 25 years later, the same fuckery is going on and the same shit is going on, where Bernard Parks, and I quote, said, "We are not a secret police," what this fool said as well. And Kalish, who was a commander, who was then kicked out because then got paid and all of that, and he said that the public has a right to know about its police force. Commander LaChase, head of Criminal Intelligence Division, said that personally, I don't find it intrusive at all. This is 25 years ago. And this guy, the president, the entertainment lawyer, is saying that we are publishing private data from a public records goddamn thing. So that is the bullshit that we are facing, not just degrading and dehumanizing our children, but fucking themselves over constantly by exposing their own lies and their own bullshit history.
Thank you, Mr. Khan.
Next, we have Felicia Duarte.
Good morning. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I just want to say power to the people. All cops are bastards, colonizing slave catchers. Oh, excuse me. Gotta smoke my meth, my morning meth. Oh, that was a good one. Okay, it doesn't last long, so I don't know. Defund the police, ACAB, all that stuff that's, I've sobered up. I'd like to urge any commissioners to refrain from any impropriety or appearance of impropriety, acting in cahoots with city council members or any involvement in nonprofits that might cloud your judgment. Corruption is at an all-time high in the city of Los Angeles. We are watching. Keep your hands out of the cookie jar. Moving on to 4B. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We fixed it, y'all fixed it with the COVID, and now we have no police. And crime is up, and people are afraid, and the community members want police, not less police. Also, please keep politics out of policing. Our SLOs are of great benefit to our communities. Our police should not be political pawns, and city council, particularly Monica Rodriguez, over involving herself in personnel matters. She shouldn't be using the police as a shield, just as community members shouldn't use their children as shields for their bad behaviors, and especially for those who are prone to violence. Using children as shields is disgusting. I'd just like to let our officers know, thank you for the boots on the ground. We're trying to improve your leadership. Chief Bended Knee needs to get off his knee and speak for all people. And the racist comments made about white supremacy and yada, 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 endless. It's disgusting. It would not be, people are not that racist, except what we hear here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, oh, let's go back to smoking our crack. Excuse me. Oh, it's good. Thank you. Have a good day, all of you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Eileen Santos.
Good morning. Born and raised in LA, I'm no stranger to high-speed pursuits and the safety LAPD has given me personally. The first time you personally kept me safe as a child on the streets was on the day of the 1997 North Hollywood bank robbery. I've come here today to share my perspective as an electrical vehicle engineer and diversity, equity, inclusivity, and accessibility program manager. I provide commentary today related to pursuit analysis. I'm about active listening, empathetic engagement, and proactive accountability. On May 5th, 2019, I lost a colleague and a friend, Benny Felix Zuniga, turning onto San Pascual Avenue from Pollard Street in Highland Park. He was T-boned by a white Chevy Silverado speeding about 80 miles per hour. In March of 1998, a study on criminal justice and behavior was published by the Department of Justice titled High Speed Pursuit, The Offender's Perspective. And the findings are, escapees and arrested individuals are willing to run at all costs. Suspects run from police for numerous reasons. Today, I encourage you, we look into changing the dialogue around escapism and look inward to define and redefine what safety, security, pursuit, and accountability mean. In 1949, Mental Health Awareness Month was established to increase awareness on the importance of mental health and wellness in Americans' lives. To continue fulfilling our vital public health and safety missions, we must foster innovative thinking and support a full array of novel scientific and technological perspectives to further discover the evolving science and culture of behavior and experience for individuals and communities alike. To close, Thomas Jefferson never explained his use of the phrase pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence, as we all know. He was actually influenced by George Mason's Virginia Declaration of Rights, and here's the full expression per se, and I ask for your attention on the last word. when they enter into a state of society, they cannot, by any compact, deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. That's my time.
Okay, next we have Paula Miner.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All items, 3 minutes, please. Yeah, I just have to say something about the remarks of Mr. Solveroff. You know, with all the serious issues that are being considered by this commission, the amount of time he spent criticizing the young man who brought his baby to commission is so unnecessary and inappropriate. Saying the child was being endangered and safe and how it made him sick. Made him sick. This is the first time we have heard of anything that made Mr. Soberoff sick during commission. Not all the harm, not all the horrific acts, not parents coming in and crying when their loved one had been shot, but a baby's presence made him sick. Mr. Soberoff's been on this commission since 2013. We in Black Lives Matter have been attending and monitoring this commission for the same time. There have been babies, children in strollers. One of my friends regularly brought his white children into this commission, regular meetings. Mr. Soberoff never criticized. But when a Black man shows up with his child, he is excessively criticized. And this is another example of the negative attitude toward the Black community of this commission, because Mr. Soberoff is a leader of your commission. He's been on the commission longer than any of you sitting there. His voice influences a lot of what you say and do. And the fact that no one commented on this says you implicitly agree with him. So this is the body people should be coming to express their concerns about the harm of LAPD, the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, the lack of truth in the system. People should not come here to be criticized about their parenting skills. And everyone who submits a card should be allowed to speak when they show up downtown. Also, these meetings need to change to a time and location that is more accessible to the community. As mentioned, coming downtown at 9:30 in the morning, and at the same time on Tuesday when numerous other civic meetings people need to be at are occurring. And then last and certainly not least, I just have to comment on the fact of the officer who was accused of raping a minor. The issue is he would just recently become an officer. He'd been through the academy. We wonder, is this an example of the expedited background checks that you're talking about changing to? This occurred before he joined LAPD. Was there no background check, or is this the kind of background checks we are to expect in the future as you're trying to increase the number of police who join LAPD? I yield my time. I'm done. It's too much. It's too much.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Adam Smith.
Madam Secretary, this is the last speaker.
Okay.
I wasn't gonna come today, but I just wanted to come and show support for my friend Jason, his beautiful partner, and his beautiful baby, because what happened last week was absolutely disgusting. Commissioner Briggs, Commissioner Shields, and Southers, even Kalanche, you all weren't here, but Steve was. Sometime in 2017, I started coming to these meetings regularly, and as a stay-at-home parent, hey Steve, shut the fuck up! I'm here to speak, you listen to me, motherfucker, okay? The way you talk down to Black children, you can sit here and listen to me, motherfucker. Commissioner Kalanche, Commissioner Briggs, Commissioner Southers, Commissioner Shields. Sometime in 2017, I started coming to these meetings regularly. Since 2015, I've been a stay-at-home parent. And as part of me coming to anything, the grocery store, police commission, I would bring my children. I would bring a double stroller. I would bring my children every week. Since my youngest was 1 and my oldest was 2. And not once, as has been brought up and alluded to,
did anyone here ever say that, infer that I was putting my children in danger? I've cursed this whole board out. I've yelled. I've gotten forcibly removed from this meeting with a double stroller, with my 2 kids, and never have I been accused of putting my kids in danger. And so it is fucking gross that Steve said that and acts like that, and it's worth naming and shaming that. And 5 decades of being a big brother doesn't do anything. Like, that doesn't make it better, Steve. It actually makes you more of a fucking creep. It does. It's worth naming and shaming the rampant child abuse and sexual abuse and rape that is rampant inside the institution of policing. The policing isn't the only institution where child abuse is rampant, but it's the only one that uses things like youth programming and community policing programs and things like PAL, Dr. Southers, to legitimate and expand policing in neighborhoods where kids are going to be victimized by the police. And it's with our money. And speaking of children, the first time I came to this meeting, the first meeting I ever came to, my son was like this big. He was a giant 1-year-old. Was the day that 14-year-old, this board, led by President Soboroff at the time, decided that the murder of 14-year-old Jesse Romero in Boyle Heights, Lou Calanche, maybe you remember Jesse, unanimously voted that the murder of Jesse Romero was in LAPD policy. Murdered by Eden Medina, who killed someone 11 days before that. It's not funny. It's not a fun time to come here and talk about this shit. It's not fun to talk about fucking child rape and to be laughed at by this Jimmy Buffett looking like motherfucker. It's disgusting. You all are disgusting because every one of you are complicit in this shit. Dr. Southers, what's the prescription? More child programming in police? That seemed to work out in Santa Monica, huh, bud?
Mr. Khan, please, you're disrupting the meeting. Mr. Khan, you are disrupting the meeting. Please stop.
How can this motherfucker sit there right now? How can you allow him to be?
I'm ordering you to leave the meeting, Mr. Khan.
Criminalize our children. Do you see that baby? Do you see
Mr.
that
Sergeant at Arms, please escort Mr. Khan out of the meeting.
beautiful child? In your fucking time, you seem to say that God speaks through our children. Is that what you're doing now to God speaking through?
I'm asking that the Sergeant of Arms please escort Mr. Khan out of the meeting. Mr. Khan.
How can you come after our children like that? How can you fucking just dehumanize our children? Rape is in policy of children. Murder is in policy of children. Dehumanization of the policy of children.
Mr. Khan, you've gone on long enough. I'm asking that you leave the meeting. Sergeant of Arms, please escort Mr. Khan out of the meeting.
You are complicit in the raping and harming of our people. You do that to our children, you piece of shit. And you still
Mr. Khan, please leave the meeting. You've had your 15 minutes, Mr. Khan. Please leave.
Fuck your 15 minutes. Fuck your 15 minutes. This is a lifetime fucking thing. This isn't about this motherfucker. It's not a goddamn cocktail party. You're boast about being a little police person. How can you sit there and watch it? How can you fucking talk about legacy? How can you talk about working with youth? How can you justify your time spending with youth? Is this how you nourish children? Is this how you create safe space for the children? Is this how we're supposed to bring our children? Aren't we supposed to bring our children to these places? This is a fucking public place. How dare this motherfucker say that? That's our fucking baby. That's our community's baby. That's our collective baby.
That's right.
Do you have no goddamn shame?
And none of you have anything to say about it?
Motherfuckers sitting there like goddamn fucking statuettes. And then that motherfucker keeps on barking and fucking spitting lies. And then you goddamn oversaw that fucking just activities lead. And now you're here as fucking governing this fucking body and seems to be the civilian representative. Fuck you all, motherfuckers. Steve Soboroff, you ain't seen the fucking end of this shit. This is our baby. This is our baby. This is our baby. This is our baby. That needs to be hugged. That needs to be loved. And this is what you're doing to your baby.
At this time, we're going to go to item 3 on the consent agenda. Any commissioners want any of the items held aside?
You just saw this fucking officer put his hands on a black man, another black man. You guys don't care about black people in this room. And what
Mr.
did you
Reedy,
say?
you're disrupting the meeting.
About that, did you say, hey, de-escalate
Mr.
or
Reedy,
whatever?
I'm going to ask that you stop.
Exit the room. When I exit the room, are you
Mr. Reedy, please, you are disrupting the meeting.
Yes, that's obvious.
Asking that you cease disruption.
Huh?
I'm asking that you stop
Why should I
disrupting the
stop
meeting.
when you guys aren't saying shit? You literally just saw an officer put his hands on a black man.
I'm going to ask that the sergeant of arms remove Mr. Reedy from the meeting,
Literally
please.
documenting what was happening in this meeting, and you didn't say shit about that. You didn't say shit about that, did you? Did you? It's a fucking sham. You don't give a fuck about people that look like me. Even you, Briggs.
That's-
Even you. Even you, Southers.
Please escort Mr. Reedy from the meeting.
I'm out now too. See you next week. She left. How come you're not leaving, Steve?
At this time, we're going to item 3 on the agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any questions concerning any of the items? Seeing none, I move that we adopt items 3A and B. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. This time, we're going to item 4A on the regular agenda, on the department's presentation concerning Metropolitan Division and Special Weapon Tactics.
Don't need more militarized toys, I can tell you that for sure.
Good morning, Chief Kowalski.
Good morning, President Briggs. Good morning, Chief Moore, entire Board of Police Commissioners.
Don't perform agreement with what's being said unless you're gonna have.
Mr. Sherwin, please stop disrupting the meeting.
I brought my kids here when child rape is happening.
Can you please stop disrupting the meeting, sir?
Item bullshit. We'll stop disrupting in a second. But we're not done now. That's bullshit for you to perform agreement like that. Stop smiling at my shit, or it's not for you.
Mr. Sherwin, I'm going to ask that you stop disrupting the meeting, or please leave. Chief Kowalski, please.
Good morning. We're here today to provide a brief overview of LAPD's Metropolitan Division. Captain Moda has prepared a presentation for you, and I'll turn it over to him for the PowerPoint and presentation.
Excuse me, Chief Kowalski. Sir, can you please stop disrupting the meeting? Or please leave. Sergeant of Arms, can you please escort this gentleman from the meeting?
Child rape is pretty disruptive, Commissioner Briggs. You said please.
Please leave, sir.
Is child rape not disruptive? Is child abuse not disruptive? Is child abuse not disruptive? Anyone?
Sergeant of Arms, please escort the gentleman from the meeting, please.
Is child rape not disruptive? Is the murder of Valentino Ariana Peralta, a 14-year-old, not disruptive? Just notice that, like what Jason said, your cops just put your hands on Matios when he was standing here. These motherfuckers haven't put their hands on me yet. What's the difference? What's the difference? What is the difference? I've been standing here.
I'm sorry, Chief, can you start again, please?
Good morning. We're here today to provide a brief overview of the LAPD's Metropolitan Division. Captain Moda has prepared a presentation for you, and I will turn it over to him for his insight.
Morning, Captain.
Morning, Mr. President. Thank you, Chief Kowalski, and good morning, President Briggs, Vice President Southers, and Commissioners Kalanche, Shields, Sobroff, Mr. Tifank, Inspector General Smith, City Attorney De La Guerra. My name is Mario Moda, and I am the Assistant Commanding Officer of Metropolitan Division. I am here today to provide you with an overview of Metropolitan Division and its highly specialized units, to include the Special Weapons and Tactics team. I have prepared a PowerPoint to assist with the presentation, and with your approval, President Briggs, I would like to begin.
Please proceed.
The number on your screens is the number 114. It represents the divisional number for Metropolitan Division. The number was taken from the original squad room at the old Police Administration Building, also known as Parker Center, which no longer exists. Metro was assigned room 114 from 1955 to 1968, and the designation of 114 is still in use to this date. The original door is actually on display at our Metropolitan Division headquarters. The Metropolitan Division mission statement. The mission of Metropolitan Division is to support the department's community-based policing efforts to reduce the incidence and the fear of crime on a citywide basis. This is accomplished by developing and deploying a reserve force of most highly trained and disciplined personnel possible. The effectiveness of the department's field commanders in realizing the long-term goals of the department is enhanced by Metropolitan Division's control application of specialized tactics and equipment, and the ongoing training and leadership provided by Metropolitan Division to the department. Metropolitan Division was created in 1933 by then Chief James Davis. At the time, LAPD had 1,200 officers. It was created from the reserve unit, hence to the R designation, which we still use to this date, the vagrancy squad, which no longer exists, and the intelligence bureau, which I could only imagine it's part of our detective bureau here today. And then from various other details from working the chief's office. Today, Metropolitan Division is comprised of 2 platoons, B and C platoons, which are tactical support platoons. D platoon is our special weapons and tactics team. E platoon is our mounted unit. And then we have an H platoon, which is the dignitary protection detail, and it provides protection to the chief, the mayor, and the city attorney. And then our M platoon, which is our which houses our administrative unit, our training cadre, our maritime operations team, formerly the underwater dive unit, and the armory. We also have the K9 platoon and our crime impact team. Regarding our B and C platoons, the primary function of B and C platoons is to provide tactical support platoon members to address the needs of the department and geographical area detectives with their investigations. A secondary function of the platoons is to provide security at high-profile events such as the Grammys, the Academy Awards, and other mass gatherings in the city of Los Angeles, such as the LA Marathon and sporting events. We also have a highly mobile response capability that can be activated at any time when an incident calls for an immediate response. B and C platoons work closely with the United States Secret Service and the Department of State to provide protection to the President of the United States and Vice President of the United States when they are visiting the Los Angeles region, and other high-profile dignitaries and individuals. The platoon's auxiliary duty is to provide training to LAPD personnel with mobile field force and firearms training that I will cover shortly. In 2018, all traditional crime suppression activities were modified to focus on detective investigations and named suspects. In 2022, B and C platoons combined for a total of 388 tactical support platoon operations. They served 76 search warrants for area and specialized detectives. They conducted 27 probation and parole compliance checks and made a total of 338 arrests, and that is in addition to many POTUS and VPOTUS details and special events to include the Marathon, Academy Awards, and other frequented visited events. They also did tactical support elements for planned and unplanned events. Regarding training that we provide to the department, we have a cadre of 1 supervisor and 15 officers that are assigned to training division, but they are part of Metropolitan Division. They provide training for the department in mass violence tactical response, critical thinking force options, which is weapons other than firearms, crowd control, and that is also as a result of the after-action report and implementation, less lethal advanced for crowd-controlled environments, that is regarding AB 48. We teach in-service recruits, And we also teach at supervisor and watch commander schools. And we also provide training for neighboring agencies on mass violence tactical response, and we put on large-scale exercises for active shooter responses. Regarding our dignitary protection, I mentioned they provide protection to the chief of police, the mayor, and the city attorney. E-Platoon is our mounted unit, and it was established in 1987 and as a component of Metropolitan Division and is currently composed of 23 full-time officers. We have a 35-stall barn near Griffith Park, and on average, we have 26 horses at the barn and ready for field deployment. Funding for the mounted unit is provided by private donors to acquire new horses. The mounted unit was recently deployed in West Los Angeles Division following two hate crime incidents, two hate crime related shootings that occurred in mid-February of this year. They also deployed recently to the Topanga Mall following an incident there, and they are regularly deployed at Venice Beach, the Melrose Corridor, downtown LA, Hollywood area, and certain portions of South Los Angeles. Regarding our K-9 platoon, it was established in 1980, and then our police service dogs are utilized to mitigate the risk associated with searches and reduce the propensity for violence and or minimize the potential for uses of force. Police service dogs are employed because of their extraordinary sense of smell, which enables officers to find suspects who may otherwise never be located. Currently, we have 19 K-9 handlers, and on average, we average 19 police service dogs, 4 of which are used for article searches only, which is they search for firearms and firearms-related paraphernalia. Since 1995, the K-9 platoon has conducted 13,930 searches. They've located 8,110 suspects for a nearly 60% find ratio. On the right-hand side is one of our K-9 officers, Mari Corral. She's still there at the K-9 unit, is one of our K-9 handlers. And our LAPD policy requires that officers provide a K-9 announcement prior to conducting searches. Secondary announcements are also given when searching residences and other locations that may be inhabited. Less than 3% of our injuries are serious in nature, and the actual number is actually 2.2%. Serious injuries are deemed categorical uses of force and investigated by Force Investigation Division. All police service dog bites injuries require treatment by a doctor at a local hospital, as per our policy. Metropolitan Division's police service dogs went to the find and bark standard in 1995. So for 28 years, we left the industry standard at the time of find and bite, and many local agencies still use the find and bite standard. So we've been using the find and bark for the last 28 years. My next slide is, again, regarding tactical de-escalation, is the use of resources and tactics to reduce the intensity of an incident and mitigate the need to escalate the use of force. A K-9 operation epitomizes the above philosophy of tactics. On this photo picture is Officer Alan Ramirez, and he was one of our 3 officers that was injured in the line of duty on March 8th in Hollenbeck Division. Regarding K-9 deployments over the past 5 years, since 2018 to 2022, we've deployed to 1,771 incidents. We've located 1,456 suspects for an 82% find ratio. And we average approximately 1.4 categorical uses of force a year. We have as part of Metropolitan Division, we have a crime impact team. And that team is one of many of the Los Angeles Police Department's tactical surveillance teams. The CIT team members are alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives task force officers, and currently we have 4 officers that are also deputized ATF agents. They are selected from our line platoons, and a little recap on them is that in 2022, that team of 12 officers recovered 258 firearms and 258 firearms, of which 107 of those were ghost guns, and many of those were assault rifles. They also served 114 search warrants. They themselves authored 92 search warrants. They made 88 felony arrests, 40 additional warrant arrests, conducted 328 follow-ups and 277 surveillance operations, so a very successful small unit within Metropolitan Division. Our M platoon, which also incorporates our maritime operations team and our detectives. M platoon is the administrative platoon for Metropolitan Division and is comprised of the following units: our training cadre, our front desk personnel, we have a body-worn video cadre, investigative detectives, and our maritime operations team, which is technically our underwater dive team. The MOD, which we call maritime operations team, is comprised of a small full-time cadre, 1 supervisor and 3 officers, but we also have a large ancillary cadre of approximately 40 officers department-wide. Our detectives conduct investigative support for SWAT and all the platoons. We have our armory, so within Metropolitan Division, we have our own armory, and they do repairs and maintain all of our equipment, along with weapons and ammunition for Metropolitan Division personnel. The armory tests new equipment for Metropolitan Division as well as the department. Some of the equipment that we have at Metropolitan Division, pictured will be the Taser Shockwave, which is the picture to the upper right-hand corner, our small unmanned aerial systems, which is pictured on the center there, which are our quote-unquote our drones. We have several robotics, and then our Metropolitan Division officers and detectives are actually FAA certified remote SUAS pilots. Other equipments that we have are our Bearcat vehicles, our ballistic engineered armored response counterattack trucks, pictured on the right-hand side, the 40 millimeter less lethal launchers, which is the center picture in green, and below that is our 37 millimeter Sage ordnance and the related rounds that go with those weapon systems. Moving on to our special weapons and tactics team. SWAT was established in 1967, and then following the 1984 Olympics, we had our first formalized selection process. That was in 1988. SWAT responds to armed barricaded suspects and warrant services. They serve high-risk warrants supporting detectives department-wide. And then within SWAT is the crisis negotiation team, which is integrated in the SWAT teams and as a centralized model, meaning with every SWAT response, there is also a CNT response. And then the SWAT, I do want to clarify that the SWAT team does not have any procured military equipment. We do have equipment that's deemed AB 481, but none of that equipment was acquired through any military branch. It was all acquired through private companies. And then picture on the right-hand side is a picture of SWAT officer Randy Simmons, who died in the line of duty on February 7th, 2008. This past February was his 15-year anniversary of his passing. In May, we have Memorial Day, National Police Week, and departments across the nation host events in honor of their fallen officers. As such, I want to take just a few moments to honor Officer Simmons for his contributions to the city and the department. Thank you for allowing me this time.
Captain, thank you very much.
I'm still going.
Sorry.
That was just a moment of silence there.
Got it.
SWAT response and deployments. So we have 3 type of deployment packages. We have a full deployment, which consists of 22 SWAT personnel, consisting of 1 lieutenant, 2 supervisors, and 16 officers. We also have a CNT component that responds with that, which is 1 supervisor and 2 additional officers. We also have a doctor from our behavioral science services that responds, Army personnel respond, as well as command staff from Metropolitan Division, our bureau, and also the impacted division and bureau. We also have a modified package that is determined by an incident, and we do that to minimize the community impact and the footprint that we create in the community. So we deploy according to the incident and to the size of the incident. And then our CNT only, which will have 1 supervisor and 2 officers that respond. And most recently, we responded to the Hollywood incident involving that gentleman that had climbed the KTLA tower. We also responded to a jumper in downtown LA and a family dispute involving a subject that had threatened his mother with a screwdriver and then climbed onto the rooftop. Regarding a barricaded suspect, A barricaded suspect incident prompting a SWAT response may include, but is not limited to, the following criteria. The suspect is probably armed. Probable cause exists to believe that the suspect is involved in a criminal act. The person is in a position of advantage, affording cover and or concealment, or is contained in an open area, and the presence or approach of police officers could precipitate an adverse reaction by the suspect, and the suspect refuses to submit to an arrest. Within SWAT, we have various cadres, and every SWAT officer belongs to 2 or 3 of those cadres. We have the Crisis Negotiations Team, which is the CNT cadre, the Climbing cadre, we have Breaching, Tech and Robotics, EMT. Every SWAT response will have EMT trained officers at the scene. We have a counterterrorism self-contained breathing apparatus for contaminated environment response, and we usually respond with hazmat on those incidents. We have our defensive tactics and chemical agents, tactical waterborne that we use with our underwater dive team, snipers, and firearms. In 2022, SWAT responded to 122 callouts for armed barricaded suspects, suicidal mentally ill subjects, and served 19 high-risk warrants, 20 of which were CNT only. In 2022, 188 incidents were resolved through guidance and advice with the on-duty lieutenant, meaning both SWAT lieutenants received 182 calls from incident commanders on the field. After screening the call and giving them advice and de-escalation techniques, those incidents were resolved by field personnel without the need for SWAT to respond. So therefore, the SWAT lieutenants fielded 304 calls in 2022, and we responded to 122 of those calls only. Over the past 5 years, we averaged approximately 110 responses, and to date, we have responded to 48 callouts. We're a little bit high above our average, but in March, we had a week in which we had 11 callouts in 1 week. Regarding the use of force by our SWAT team, from 2013 to 2022, SWAT responded to 1,031 callouts. Patrol officers were, of those callouts, patrol officers were involved in 101 uses of force incidents, which equates to 10% prior to SWAT even responding. SWAT was involved in 81 uses of force incidents out of those 1031, which is 8%. And then 1% of the time, both SWAT and the patrol officers were involved in the use of force with the same subject. So therefore, 835 callouts in the past 10 years, which equates to 81%, which resulted in the use of no use of force at all. Our CNT team was activated 20 times in 2022. They are highly reliant on proven training and technological advances. And and this is an interesting statistic, when contact is made with the suspects or subjects via CNT, 89.9% of the time the incidents are resolved without the use of any force. Regarding our CNT cadre, every SWAT officer goes through a 40-hour CNT course. We have cadre members that have every DP, they go through a 9-hour training. And then every year, every SWAT officer goes through our CNT refresher course. In 2021, we averaged 1.7 hours of CNT prior to us going tactical on any incident. In 2022, it was 1.5 hours. And this year, 2023, we're up to 2.5 hours of CNT negotiations with the suspect or subject. What prompts the CNT response? An armed person threatening to commit suicide, or a suicidal person on an elevated platform or other unique venue that poses a significant safety risk to first responders. And it is also extremely important to understand that not all suicidal subjects are considered barricades or require a SWAT or CNT response or immediate police action. Contributions that SWAT has made to the department over the last several years. They spearheaded the department's tactical disengagement protocol for non-criminal, mentally ill, suicidal, or low-level offenses. That's our training bulletin on tactical disengagement, July 2019. They also helped revise the barricaded subjects bulletin, which differentiated between suspect and subjects and that's our training bulletin on barricaded suspects. And they also assisted the Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy in crafting a comprehensive search warrant policy following the tragic death of Breonna Taylor after the service of a no-knock warrant in Louisville, Kentucky. Although the state of California already prohibited no-knock warrants, the BOPC wanted us to codify that into our policy, which we did and helped in that process. Additional contributions that the SWAT team has made to the department is that in 2019, between 2019 and 2021, they developed a one-day course on CNT, de-escalation, crisis communication, and disengagement as part of an innovations grant through the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. They trained over 800 students. It was an 8-hour course. And then they also regularly provide, or our SWAT leadership regularly provides instruction to our basic supervisor school, our watch commander school, roll call trainings, and supervisors meetings. And they most recently, at the start of this year, they collaborated with Training Division to develop the online training video on barricaded suspects and disengagement protocols following 3 tragic incidents in January of this year. And they also train outside agencies on best practices. On the right-hand picture on this photo is, to the right is Officer Rodney Williams, who was shot in the face in 2021 during a barricaded incident. And the officers on that team were awarded the Top Cop Award in Washington, D.C. last year. So that was a picture of that. Metropolitan Division, although we're highly specialized in training and equipment, but we also do a lot of community outreach and community engagement programs. We do, and every time we take the opportunity to help out the bureaus with their community academies. We participate on the Special Olympics, Make-A-Wish Foundation. We've made a lot of wishes for kids in need. So we partner with Make-A-Wish Foundation, also the Sunshine Kids, Orthopedic Hospital with toy drives, various school events. We partner with the Children's Hospital for blood drives regularly, and we participate in open houses. In the spirit of full transparency, I do want to welcome each of you to our facilities and take a tour, demo, and you're more than welcome to always come to one of our barricades or high-risk warrant services. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Captain. I really appreciate the presentation to get to understand what it is our Metro and SWAT division does for our city and to keep us safe. I am going to ask you, however, some questions that I know are of concern to some of the citizens of Los Angeles. Last year, we had an incident with the barricaded suspect, and SWAT responded. And one of the officers, unfortunately, said to another officer, "Happy hunting." I want to ask you whether or not that terminology is in fact the ethos or the culture of SWAT when they approach barricaded suspects.
Very good question, President Briggs. I was present at that incident, and that full disclosure, about 36 hours after that incident, when I saw the body-worn video and heard that statement, I immediately took action to address that concern. Through our own discipline system, we addressed it. We had a full briefing with all SWAT officers regarding that is not our reputation and that is not my expectation. That comment was addressed. That officer was immediately removed from the cadre pending further investigation, and the whole incident was investigated properly through the proper channels. Regarding the culture of SWAT, over many years, even before I got there, I've been there for about 1.5 years, it has constantly evolved and it has constantly faced various levels of scrutiny for one reason or the other. I am here to tell you that the officers that are assigned to SWAT, and we have approximately 70 officers total, are highly professional, dedicated, passionate about what they do, hence their participation in some of these cadres that they do, CNT cadres, and they all take every incident personal. And what we echo is the use of non-violence, no force. This year in 2023, we have not been involved in any officer-involved shooting, any non-categorical use of force. In 2022, that was our one incident, officer-involved shooting, and we only had one non-categorical use of force. That is, we're responding to the most volatile of incidents. And when I have a SWAT team and dedication from these officers to not to use the least amount of force necessary, that is the culture. That is what we portray day in and day out and carry out, not that happy hunting incident. That's been addressed. As their commanding officer, I am confident that that will never happen again.
Thank you very much, Captain. Now some easy ones for you. Well, maybe not so easy. We have some high-profile events that will take place in the city of Los Angeles that will be coming up soon. I'm talking about the World Cup, talking about the Olympics. Around the world, we've seen state actors who have deployed everyday objects in the use of creating terrorism. I'm talking using drones to harm civilians and others. What will the department do to ensure that the city of Los Angeles, its citizens, and the visitors from around the world are safe from those who would do us harm?
President Briggs, if you don't mind, I'll take that question.
Sure.
And representing not only the Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau, but the entire department on that. We realize that the next several years are going to be critical for this, not just this department, but for this city because of the type of events that we have starting now leading up through 2028. And the responsibility that falls on the Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau and the Office of Special Operations in terms of preparation. We realize that we have to be at the forefront to address these threats, these nation-state actors, and these groups that frankly will be organized to conduct different type of attacks to make this city feel unsafe. Beginning with technology, we realize the threat of drones is real. When you look at overseas, what's happening over there with these drones, it's inevitably going to impact us here in the United States, especially here in Los Angeles with these mass gatherings that are coming up. We have been in the SUAS program now for 4 years. We have been trying to move forward and be proactive with staying with the current technology, with how these threats will impact us. And that starts with the type of technology we have here. Captain Moda mentioned the importance of technology, robotics, as it relates to special weapons and tactics. As you can see by the data, and we talked about this last year during the 10-year review of SWAT operations, from where we were in 2005 to where we are now, the situations where we use force, especially SWAT officers, has reduced greatly. I mean, it's been less than 2% where we're seeing somebody shot in one of these situations. And I think technology, especially the cadre that we have there, has been at the forefront of that. And I oversee our small unmanned aerial system working group that's not just limited to SWAT, and I know that SWAT has been utilizing this type of technology for years, but we also have included our partners at Emergency Services Division who are going to play a role in these different scenarios over the next several years in terms of bomb squad response, hazardous material units, and that type of threat. And as you know, and you've approved, Emergency Services Division has a small unmanned aerial system. They have one platform that they currently use. We've expanded that to our traffic group for specific investigations, but our working group is trying to look and lean forward on areas where, how can we be better? What's the latest technology? What's the legislation telling us about what we're allowed to do and not do? Chief Moore and I have been involved in meetings in Washington, D.C. With our federal partners about pursuing legislation that will frankly give local law enforcement the ability to detect drones and how those will and potentially mitigate those if they're going to be a threat to someone or a group in our city. That's an ongoing process, and as all of you know, has been going on for years, and it's been an uphill battle. Some of the technology that we're also trying to bring, especially to special weapons and tactics, we've presented to you. Boston Dynamics and SPOT is one area, not just for SWAT operations, but as you recently saw in New York with a building collapse, that technology was utilized by both the fire department and the police department in one scenario to try to identify and save lives. We realize that we're going to need this technology to address these threats moving forward. I think as a whole, we work very well with our federal partners on that and the intelligence sharing, and I know that's a totally different topic, but we have already begun discussions with national partners on developing working groups with different cities, not only cities here in the United States, but for example, Toronto Police Department, they're going to be part of the FIFA soccer tournament, Los Angeles, of course, being one of those cities. We've already discussed sharing information with them, with those partners. So we're expanding that beyond just national level and local level, but international partners and how we can become better at information sharing. Because if those threats are going to happen here, they're going to happen in cities like Toronto as well. And we need to be working and prepared. These are just, I could go on continuously, but I think those are some of the starting points that we see to prevent these type of attacks. And I should say too, Captain Moda mentioned the West LA shooting where we did have our Metro mounted in that district to make the community feel better. But when you look at that incident, the partnership that we showed with the FBI is clearly a model on addressing these type of attacks. And just most recently, the FBI is putting our department in for another award with IACP this coming fall in San Diego for a disrupted plot of Mark Domingo, which occurred in 2019. And that particular case demonstrates the continued partnership of staying ahead of these type of attacks to prevent these lone wolf offenders from causing these attacks, which, as you've seen, even in the first quarter of 2023, has impacted many communities and devastated them that, frankly, they may never recover from. So we're trying to prevent those type of attacks and make sure that these major incidents here in Los Angeles will be safe for everyone to attend.
Thank you, Chief Kowalski. At this time, Commissioner Shields, any questions?
Yes, thank you. I had a couple questions. One is relating to staffing. I know that the department itself has a shortage of officers, and I wanted to hear a little bit about how the Metro Division has changed over the years. I understand that there may have been a platoon that has been decreased, so can you just talk a little bit about where you're at now, where you were, and where you think you need to be for preparation for all of these events through 2028?
Yeah, I could take that. Thank you, Commissioner. Currently, Metropolitan Division has 290 employees, sworn employees. We have 45 vacancies, so we're TO'd for approximately 335, but it's, we're in the same situation as some of our patrol divisions with a shortage of officers, and also the recruitment inter-Metropolitan Division. In years past, Metropolitan Division has gone through increase, decreases, increase, and decreases, and I think at the peak a few years ago, they were at about 450 officers, and we had 2 additional tactical support platoons. Due to the needs of the department, we had been managed attrition, and we're down to our current numbers, which ultimately, at the end of the day, with those numbers, we still provide an effective reserve force for the department, to include, obviously, our special weapons and tactics and all our specialized cadres. Ideally, any CEO that sits here before you is going to say, I want to have full staffing, right? But that's not the reality. But we do our best with what we have. We are able to do a force multiplier by training patrol officers, like I mentioned, with all the trainings that we do on mobile field force and mass violence training. So in essence, we do have 6,000 additional officers that have capabilities of helping out with the needs of the department, correct? For specialized incidents such as Metropolitan Division. Staffing, 335 is what we're TO'd for. We have 290. We did get, most recently, within the last 4 weeks, we got eight new officers into the division. In April of 2022, we had our first BMS selection, Basic Metro School selection process. That was the first one since 2017. We have 86 people in our standing pool, and little by little, we were able earlier this year in December and January to hold our first Basic Metro School. It was a 6-week course. We were able to put 30 people from the Office of Operations into that school. We brought in 8 individuals just 3 weeks ago. So with the chief's support, we're hoping to bring in all 30 people and get up to about 320.
And just to add from the Bureau perspective, obviously over the last 4 years, our personnel strength, like the rest of the department, has changed, but also our missions have changed. And the expectation from Chief Moore is that we've evolved in our crime fighting strategies, becoming more strategic. Captain Moda mentioned the crime impact team and the effect that they have had, specifically as it relates to becoming task force officers with our partners at Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the amount of firearms that they have recovered from the streets, specifically ghost guns, which, as we know, has been a national problem in our violent crime challenges with all of our other major agencies. But I think we've had some quality work done by them and the entire division. And even most recently, the ATF has recognized the LAPD for their work in reducing gun violence on the streets.
Thank you. And I just had one other question. And before I get to that question, I just wanted to hope the canine officers who were injured are doing better. So please extend our thoughts to them as they recover. The other question, and I think, Captain, you mentioned that in 2018, and Chief, you kind of talked about the changing of strategies and changing crime-fighting strategies, but you mentioned that in 2018, particularly the B and C platoons modified from kind of crime suppression to kind of supporting investigations. Can you just explain that a little further of what that means?
Just at the time, we talked about personnel strength and different times in policing. At the time, we had more than 2 line platoons, B and C. We had 1 platoon committed to each geographic bureau to serve them for their crime issues. But during that time, we moved into changing off a crime suppression model, and we became, as I mentioned, a little more strategic in our crime fighting. We were starting to see the reductions in personnel strength across the department.
Chief Kowalski, can you, I don't think it's understood what crime suppression, what that means. So uniform deployments and, for that deployment scheme, what is a platoon? Is that 50, 60 people? And just kind of a little more English, plain English.
So generally, when we talk about those platoons, tactical platoons that ideally would be up to 1 lieutenant, 6 supervisors, 60 officers optimally. And one of their primary roles at that time was crime suppression, which is defined as an example being an area has an increase in a specific crime, primarily violent crime in an area, and the direction from the director of the Office of Operation to us would be, we would need some metropolitan crime suppression support in that area to try to reduce the amount of violence that's occurring. So we would analyze when these were occurring, maybe during from the afternoon into the evening, early morning hours. We would place Metropolitan in those areas, and they would be high visibility. They would conduct traffic stop, pedestrian stops at the time. And that was a form of trying to reduce any type of crime in those areas while working with the geographic divisions and their officers with trying to find wanted suspect. But we moved out of that model at the time for various reasons. And the model we currently have is to placing officers to work with the areas now on specific targets. We mainly wanted persons, follow-ups for specific named suspects on crime reports. And as Captain Moda mentioned in his results, we're seeing effectiveness in that area and a different way of conducting police work. If I can elaborate more, but I think I kind of covered it. But now we're down to a model with B and C platoon, which years ago was the norm. We had a large increase in Metropolitan, but that has since reduced to the size that Captain Moda mentioned.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields. Commissioner Suthers.
First, Chief, Captain, thank you for the excellent presentation and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
A couple of questions and a comment. So I understand you're up to 290 personnel in Metro. However, you've got 22 personnel assigned to D platoon?
No, on D platoon, we have approximately 70 total officers.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. That takes care of that. The second one is on canines. So you've got 19 canines for the do article searches. None of those canines in Metro are explosive detection canines?
Or what type of canine?
Not explosive detection canines?
Correct. So
Okay.
we have Emergency Services Division, which is also out of Chief Kowalski's Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau, and they have the explosive canines.
And we've been doing find and bark since?
1995.
That deserves some promotion and some awareness as the community is concerned, particularly as we talk about black and brown communities over decades that have been victimized by patrol canines across the country. I think it'd be very important for the community to know that we've got find and bark as a policy, and that's how our dogs are trained.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thirdly, date myself here. I worked in the '84 Olympics as an officer. I hope I'm going to work in LA 28 with the university, and I've consulted to Olympics around the world. What concerned me in '84 was that, with all due respect to LAPD creating SWAT, what happened in 1984 between Chief Gates and Special Agent in Charge Bretzing became the talk of the town when people were trying to decide jurisdiction. And since that time, obviously, there's been a lot of interagency coordination, a lot of interagency training. I just want to hear that we here at LAPD SWAT are consistently training with other special weapons teams across this county, particularly as we get ready for these world-class events coming up. And we're not going to have a turf battle over whose city, whose location, whose venue, things like that.
Yeah. Sir, I think one of the things that we stress, especially in this bureau, is working well with federal, state, local partners. The last several years, we endured the challenges with our bomb squad and an incident on 27th Street. And the importance of working with other agencies is critical. And we have liaisons in that particular entity with both military, federal, and local partners, example, LA County sheriffs. The relationship of our SWAT team with other SWAT teams is amazing. Both of our SWAT lieutenants have done tremendous outreach. Both are very tenured and seasoned, have developed strong relationships. I have relationships with the counterparts at the agencies, particularly Chief Jack Ewell, who oversees the LA County Special Enforcement Bureau. For example, when the canine incident occurred and our SWAT team was deployed to this incident and was very involved, we immediately reached out to them, and they offered to provide not only canine coverage in the city, but also SWAT coverage for any major incidents. And then following that incident, only days later, they were involved in a very prolonged barricade in the city of Industry that lasted more than 48 hours. And due to their exhaustion from that incident, we took over that incident on about probably hour 32, and we ultimately concluded it without incident. And again, I think it starts at the top, the relationships between Sheriff Luna and Chief Moore, longstanding, and we recently had many of our partners at the Counterterrorism Symposium here that President Briggs attended, and it demonstrated the continued partnership, and that's something that we try to strive for every day, because we don't want to be meeting our counterpart at day one of a major incident. These start now, and I think with 2028, we're already establishing that and setting the foundation for a successful run.
And if I can add to it, it really is an agency attitude that has shifted over 4 decades ago. I was a police officer during the 1984 Olympics as well, so I remember that experience vividly. And in the 80s, during the 80s, in the sense of the proprietary nature of law enforcement, and I believe the events of 9/11 forever shifted the landscape of American policing. The silos that had been developed in the protective space that people had, and during the decade after 9/11, it wasn't smooth, though. I will say our relationship with the feds, as you know, what a TFO and what that TFO, that task force officer working from LAPD but's working in the FBI, what was it true transparency with the agency that provided that? And it took the Bureau some time to work through that they understood that, no, this is a task force that involves all of us at the table, and we have collective responsibilities, and we share. I think a couple examples of this that only amplify more than what we have here is the airport, our relationship there with a number of federal agencies, as well as the airport police and this department. We have seen the Terminal 3 attack that occurred, that I believe, while there were obviously going to be in a chaos of the moment, so there's always going to be opportunities for improvements, there wasn't a turf issue. The pursuit of that suspect, the FBI's role in that, and the critical role that they needed. And we looked at the Dorner investigation, where we brought this entire region together and unified at the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, recognizing that man's actions, homicidal actions, occurred across multiple counties and involved a multitude of agencies. Again, while not a perfect execution, I think it demonstrates what we see today with the MTA, where we have Long Beach, the Sheriff's Department, LAPD working alongside each other. So this is the DNA of this organization today. And we find opportunities, though, to make sure we reinforce it. Just yesterday, I met with Sheriff Luna and DA Gascon to talk about should an officer-involved shooting occur, as it did here in the county a few short weeks ago, involving an out-of-county agency, what would be the agency's responses and coordination, and what did we learn from that event, setting the stage going forward. That was no criticism of Corona or Riverside or Orange County, which were involved in this, but we wanted to hot wash afterwards at the executive level to see how do we refine and ensure that we're all leaning in the same direction. So great question, based on personal experience, yours as well as mine, and I'm confident that moving forward that the department's going to sit at a table around a shared responsibility of these efforts, these global events that are occurring here in the city.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief.
And if I may add, Commissioner, 2 weeks ago, I attended a exercise with the LAPD SWAT team, the Sheriff's SWAT team, and the FBI SWAT team in Orange County. And we had 3 incidents, 3 scenarios, and we all collaborated and participated in all 3 incidents, and then did a incident debrief on that. So that was particularly interesting, where I thought I was just going to be an observer, and I wound up being an incident commander with my counterparts. But again, that goes to the collaboration of the region and the 3 SWAT teams in the area.
Okay, I'm just going to throw this out there as a thought. Softball games are always good, too. Last thing I'm going to mention is just a comment. I had the honor, if you will, of having Jennifer Grosso as a student, and I'm hoping as a commitment to the Chief's 30 by 30 that you've got in this pipeline for people to go to Metro and hopefully go to SWAT, that there are some women in that pipeline as well as we look forward in this department.
Absolutely, and great question. We do have 1 female SWAT officer that made it in just as I got there to Metropolitan Division. She is one of our SWAT officers now. We currently just brought in 7 female officers to Metropolitan Division, and we are starting a new selection process for D-Team, SWAT team. That's going to start here in about a month or two. And as part of that outreach effort, we've gone out to the various affinity groups from the department. We've done presentations at LAPOA conferences. We've done roll call training and reach out. We're going to do firearms enrichment training, practice PFQs, and practice obstacle course to help bring and more female representation into Metropolitan Division. So right now, we have a total of 15 officers that work Metropolitan Division, we had 7, and in 4 weeks, we doubled that to have 15. We're bringing in 1 lieutenant that starts next week, a female lieutenant. So we're hoping
Jennifer
to continue
Grasso.
Yep. And she was a former SWAT officer, so we're hoping to continue that outreach and bringing in female officers to Metropolitan Division.
Thank you. And President, no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Southers. Commissioner Sobroff.
Sure. I'm a believer that technology, appropriately used within the guidelines, is a great deterrent and a great de-escalator. My question to you guys is, you're always fighting to get the latest and the greatest and more. As you travel around now, preparing for the Olympic Games, World Cup, and who knows what's going to happen tomorrow after, every day. Are you seeing things that you need that you don't have? Are you, do you have a futures list? Especially when you hear all the mistruths about the Boston, the MIT, that looks like a dog. You see the hill that has to be climbed for something that is a deterrent and something that is a de-escalator and something that saves the lives of the public. Are there other things that now that you're seeing as you travel around the world, seeing other agencies that you think are appropriate? And if there are, I'm hopeful they go on your list for the Olympic Games or before the Olympic Games, because there are sources of funding that will be available that aren't.
Commissioner Sobroff, just want to say first, Chief of Police and the Commission have been very supportive on our endeavors to seek technology in this area. I've had many discussions. President Briggs and I had a recent conversation about next steps, where we want to move forward with technology for this department, addressing those threats. I think for us, being informed and knowledgeable and looking at not just what other agencies are doing here in the United States, but what's happening overseas is critical. And us looking at those type of terror threats that they have and what the technology, because as we see DOD and places like Israel, they're several years ahead of us in terms of the equipment and technology and threats, and inevitably we'll see it here. And we have to be looking at that and how we can acquire it appropriately, that the public will accept it. And I think it's our challenge here at this Bureau to be prepared for that and be able to provide and well-informed on the technology we need. But to ultimately answer your question, we have identified areas of equipment that we want, and we know that the road can be challenging through the different hurdles, but we're prepared to work through those and ultimately obtain this equipment for our officers to save lives.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you, Commissioner Briggs. Just a couple of quick follow-up questions regarding staffing. So you said there's 15 female officers now, or members of Metropolitan Division, right?
Correct.
So that's about 5%.
5.2, 5.3%.
Yeah, I did the calculation right now. Of the 45 vacancies that you have, so I actually want to learn about the process of the staffing or how an officer becomes part of the Metropolitan Division. You said you have the BMS school, right? Is that part of, like, those that train in the BMS school then have an opportunity to, or explain the process of becoming
So, so the first process is we have an advertisement for what we call an element pool member, right? Those officers will go straight to a line platoon for the most part. Although on our last special weapons and tactics vacancies, we had 3 outsiders that had never worked Metropolitan Division that went through the process and went straight to SWAT. And then eventually, here a few months ago, they actually went through the basic Metro school. However, the process will usually start off with a physical fitness test. For standard line platoon officers, that is a 1.5 mile run in 13.5 minutes, 30 push-ups and 40 sit-ups, and they must attempt a pull-up. The pull-ups are not disqualifiers, right? And then for SWAT, their standard's a little bit higher. They have to do their 1.5 miles in 12.5 minutes, 40 push-ups and 60 sit-ups, and they must do 5 pull-ups, right? So that's the first process there. Going back to our previous selection process that we started back in April, we had 235 applicants that applied for Metropolitan Division from across the department. Of those, we finished with 86 people in the outstanding pool, but during the physical fitness process, we lost about 133, 135 candidates, both male and females. The end result was that when it was all said and done and the process was completed from the physical fitness test, the background investigation, and then the oral interview, we winded up having 36% of the females that started the process finished in the outstanding pool versus 34% of the males that started the process finishing in the outstanding pool. So that was pretty interesting.
I was with the physical fitness test as well.
What was that, ma'am?
The physical fitness test, the pull-ups.
Correct.
So we still had 36%.
We still had 30%.
36% of the women in the pool.
Correct.
That 36% passed even the pull-up test.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They passed every step through there. And that process has evolved over the years, where before it was a 3-mile run. But again, over the course of time, it went from a 3-mile run to a 1.5-mile run. There was actually a whole study that was done several years ago before I got there, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. There was a study that lowered that threshold. But at the end of the day, this is why us from Metropolitan Division, we actually put out a tutorial video to help the candidates get ready for this physical fitness test in preparation, because many people will go out there and they'll do their 1.5 mile run, they'll do their push-ups and their sit-ups, but they don't do it in a circuit form, which is what they have to do when we do it. So as part of this last process, myself and my partner, Captain Bixter, we looked at where can we improve our numbers, right, and increase our pool. So for instance, we lost 41 males straight to sit-ups, right? So that means they got past the run and the push-ups, but we lost 41 males just in the sit-ups alone. And then by contrast, we lost 6 females solely on the push-ups. They never made it to the sit-ups, right? So out of 25 females that started the process, we ended up with only 11 females that actually took an oral interview, right? So we looked at the whole thing, the whole fact sheet was presented to the Bureau to see ways where we could improve. And internally, we even did a PFQ backwards, where we started with the push-ups and the sit-ups and finished with the run to see what those numbers would be, right? And then there's a whole Cooper Scale Institute thing that we use that as a benchmark, but we don't use it as a disqualifier. So I looked at all that study, right? At the end, the conclusion was that all it takes is practice, right? We have plenty of females that are working Metropolitan Division. We have plenty of males that want to work Metropolitan Division but can't get past that PFQ. It just takes practice, right? And hence the hope of why we created a video, why we created tutorials, why we do outreach to them, right? To get them ready for this process there. So I'm always going to say, if they want to work Metropolitan Division, the opportunity is there. We do all the outreach. We do the affinity. We go out to the women's running team. We're working with our diversity, equity, and inclusion officer to try to get people to work Metropolitan Division. But it's a challenging assignment. The hours are, you could be working 12 o'clock today and 2 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, right? But overall, I think I'm happy that we're trending in the right direction as far as representation of females, and we will continue to strive to having even a higher increase of that.
Okay, thank you. And besides the physical fitness test, what are other key characteristics that you're looking for that gets you closer to being the ideal candidate for Metropolitan Division?
We look at the whole officer, their work performance, their packages, the ability to de-escalate incidents. So we look at uses of force. We go through their whole training and evaluation and management system profile. When we do a background, we talk to their peers, we talk to their supervisors, we talk to their prior commanding officers. And we're looking for someone that's going to be a quick thinker, but show maturity and show de-escalation, the attributes of de-escalating incidents. We don't want anyone that's going to be in there being a hothead. That's not what we want. We want someone that's going to be, I don't want to say, it's going to look at the whole incident and make a informed decision based on what they have. Hence why we do that background investigation.
And just to add, ma'am, I mean, we realize how important it is to pick the right people, and there's been a lot of talk about physical fitness, but I mean, that's really only one part of the candidate we look for. Problem-solving skills, critical thinking. We want people that represent our community here in Los Angeles is important. And I mean, going back to SWAT for a minute, that's one of the reasons in 2021 we revised the selection process on SWAT to have more critical thinking scenarios to identify those candidates, so we can keep those situations where deadly force is used to the absolute minimum when it comes to that, because we realize the gravity of when an officer-involved shooting occurs, especially when it involves an LAPD SWAT officer, and we want to make sure that we're at the best when it comes to training and selection.
Thank you. Lastly, do you see any current obstacles that or challenges for women to get on the Metropolitan Division? So besides, I mean, like the whole like physical fitness, obviously those are easy to understand, right? Are there any other challenges besides, I mean, I can imagine like schedule. I mean, that's something that comes up a lot, right? If you're a mother with young, children, the schedule would be an impediment. Are there any other impediments that you see that we should be thinking about that would prevent women from pursuing or from being successful in getting into Metropolitan?
You want to take it?
I'll start off and I can let him get deeper into it. But I mean, throughout this process, when selection and identifying personnel, and I think the numbers prove our outreach with the number of women that we've added to Metropolitan Division on every level and every rank. But I think it started with Commander Flores, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and having sit-down conversations with trying to find those answers that you're talking about, because frankly, we don't know all the challenges that someone might have about coming over, trying out, and it's one thing to pass a physical fitness test, but does my personal life allow me to maintain this level of mission, of how mission-oriented Metro is? And I think Commander Flores has been very helpful in that respect. And Captain Mota, if you wanted to add anything more specific, some of the challenges we found.
Yeah, so as a result from our last selection process, the one where I mentioned where we have the candidates from the BMS school, I started to further understand and try to attract more female representation, and what are the hindrances as far as why are they not applying, or why aren't we getting the same number of females versus males. So I drafted a survey, and it's gone back and forth between Metropolitan Division and the Bureau. Commander Paulson a few weeks ago added some clarification. So I wanted it to be a short survey to get to the bottom of, what's stopping them from applying, right? Or what factors. So I was hoping to have a 6, 7, 10 question survey. Now we're up to like 20-something questions, right? But we're hoping to launch it very soon here via SurveyMonkey, so that before we get into the next selection process, we're able to clearly identify, what are the roadblocks here? Why aren't they applying? Is it the work schedule? I mean, personally, I think the work schedule is very demanding, right? It's very demanding because, again, this week alone, I know our platoons are starting 3 or 4 different times, from 8 in the morning, 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning. So I think that's part of it. And then also, I don't know, I think we could also make that same argument that we have a lot of officers working administrative assignments because it just works for their personal life,
Right.
right? So it's kind of like a balance here. But hopefully we'll let you know what the results of that survey once we launch it.
I mean, some of it could be perceived, right? Like
exactly.
not actual barriers, but perceived like it's a men's club or it's a buddies, or, these are the things you hear. So it could just be perceived barriers. And maybe it's important to work on those and tackle those like perceptions of what Metropolitan Division, there's a lot that I learned today that I didn't know about Metropolitan Division. And then lastly, I want to say, I think this is something that the commission worked on with you, but I'm just so glad that we're not the metro suppression that we used to have, because I grew up in a community that just saw those plane cars that would just swoop in, and which was pretty scary for a community, black and brown communities, to see those cars that were not the black and whites that you would normally see. So I'm so glad that we moved away from that.
And when you look back from, the question I answered earlier about that and the model, I think we moved away from Metro coming in under negative circumstances. Now with the missions that we have and the way we're fighting crime in a different way, plus the community outreach that Captain Moda described, it makes for a more approachable Metropolitan officer for the community.
And that's also part of the modified package response, where depending on the incident, we're not, just because we have a full package for special weapons and tactics doesn't mean that every incident is going to have, 30 plus officers show up just because it's a SWAT call out, right? Based on the incident, we'll deploy accordingly. And sometimes we don't even send armored vehicles to some of these incidents. It all depends on the incident. But we also, when we do arrive at a certain incident, one of the first things that we let go is the airship. Because we just don't want it hovering up above, and we've contained the incident. Now it's a SWAT tactical scenario. We let the airship go, right, to minimize that footprint on the community.
Right, and it's looking at the comprehensive impact of our resources, because I've seen, and just to in my comments, but I've seen where Metropolitan, the way we used to do things, would come into a CSP area. Right, and where we're working, day and night, trying to improve relationships, but then Metro comes in at night, and then everything, just kind of falls to the wayside. So just looking at all the different resources that we are deploying to communities is really important, and I'm glad that we're moving or have moved in that direction to look at the impact of all of our resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to highlight, this past weekend, Chief Kowalski and myself attended a mini Mounties program at the barn involving young adults, teenagers from Ramona Gardens. Right? So it was a great event, well attended.
That's where I grew up,
So we're hoping to continue to expand that program there. So that's just part of the things that we do with our community relations and minimizing those impacts on the community.
And the officers, they truly love it. I mean, these are some of the best police officers, highly trained, great riders on horses, but you can just see the officers melt when they're working with the kids on training them on how to ride a horse.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. Chief Kowalski, Captain Moda, thank you very much for a great presentation. Thank you for what you do. I'm sure the city appreciates you, as do I. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to take a brief 5-minute recess before we go to item 4A on the agenda, an overview of the Senior Lead Officer Program. Thank you. With us? Oh, I'm sorry. in addition to Chief Marino. Good morning, or afternoon now.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Commissioner and President Briggs, Commissioners, Mr. T-Fank, Inspector General, Carlos, City Attorney, and Chief Moore. Good afternoon. My name's Rob Marino. I'm Assistant Chief for Office of Operations. I oversee operations for the Los Angeles Police Department. Here with me today is Commander Billy Brockway, as well as Sergeant Luke Watkins, who oversees Public Engagement Section. We're here today to provide you with an overview of the Senior Lead Officer Program. The Senior Lead Officers were established in 1960. This presentation is going to give you an overview of what they do in regards to problem solving with the community, as well as addressing community concerns within the 21 geographic areas, as well as within the Community Safety Partnership Bureau sites within the city of Los Angeles. The program is going to provide you with an overview of the program, examples of community policing problem-solving process, the engagement and education that our SLOs do with the community, as well as what we're doing in regards to moving to further develop and enhance our community engagement as we move forward into the next, this year as well as next year. Seated behind me are two senior lead officers, SLO Dillard and SLO Negretti, both of which have been SLOs not only within the Office of Operations, but also with the Community Safety Partnership Bureau. They're here to answer any kind of further questions if you want to get down into specifics on what they do each day. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Commander Brockway and Sergeant Watkins, who will now begin the PowerPoint presentation.
Sorry. Good morning. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and start off with this slide because we're having a little bit of difficulty here. The senior lead officer, solving quality of life problems to increase community safety. This slide right here depicts everything that a senior lead officer, when I look at this, this is what I see. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was in my boss's office. This is my boss right here. And he made a statement and he said, evolution of the SLO. And when I look at this, this is what I think of. The SLO initially started off as a basic car leader and a mentor. And over time, the SLO evolved into solving some of the community's harshest and complex problems that any police officer could ever actually be a part of. And as you look at this slide, there are certain things in here that initially a senior lead officer don't really have any business solving. But as time went on and as our society has changed, the senior lead officer took on these obligations, and not only do they do it well, they do it effectively. So to get down into some specifics, what we know is that the concept and implementation of the senior lead officer started around the 1960s. And as time went on, and we get into 2004, police officer standing in training decided to take on the community policing role more so as a philosophy. Our department transitioned and we did that same thing. We developed 4 pillars of community policing, which are partnership, problem solving, territorial imperative, and department-wide orientation. And we took those pillars to address crime, fear of crime, and also to improve quality of life issues. Now, the department furthered that, and in 2005, we came up with this Administrative Order number 8, which basically outlined the roles and responsibility of a senior lead officer, but it also implemented our problem-solving model, which is SARA. So some of the responsibilities that we talk about with SLOs, I mentioned it earlier. Yes, we're going to monitor crime. We're going to mentor our officers in a basic car, but we're also going to get out there and we're going to develop and establish relationships with our community so that we can better serve them. So one of the main components of a senior lead officer is that of a trainer. We depend on our SLOs to develop and train the officers on that car so that they can go out and do a lot of the work that is essential to a senior lead officer's role. The biggest thing that our SLO, especially with this slide, is developing relationships. As you look at this, and it talks about senior lead officers going to community meetings, we need our SLOs to develop our officers and inspire them to want to go to these community meetings to understand what's happening in the community so that they can better serve our communities. And with that being said, I'm gonna have Commander Brockway talk about the structure.
Thanks, Luke. Really appreciate that. So we're going to go over a little bit of the statistics. So obviously, the Office of Operations, we have 21 geographic divisions. Within those geographic divisions, we have a number of SLOs, over 176 senior lead officers in those 21 geographic divisions, 30 of which are females, 146 that are males. Each division, based upon its size, population, calls for service, will have anywhere from 6 SLOs, senior lead officers, up to 12. CSP, we're in 10 different locations right now, 8 developments, 2 parks, and they're comprised of over 43 senior lead officers that are assigned to those developments and parks. So the selection process. As Mario Moto spoke earlier, it's very critical that we have a process in place to do our backgrounds and do interviews of individuals that want to be P3+1s. They have to show the desire, the dedication, the commitment, and passion for the community that they serve. So those oral interviews are usually comprised of the Captain 3, which is the area captain, as well as the patrol commanding officer. And we have to ensure that the process is fine-tuned and our backgrounds, and make personal calls to different commands to find out if that P3+1 candidate fits the bill for that area and division. So a lot of times it's somebody who's been in the division for a long amount of time, who knows the community, has worked with other P3+1s over the years. And I will share with you, in my time in Southwest Division as a probationary officer, one of the first people that I met with to develop myself as a young officer was a gentleman by the name of Randy Cochran. Was a P3+1 for pretty much his entire career. To listen to him, to see how he handled the community, to see how he engaged with the community, and as I said last week in one of our presentations, is to listen and to hear what the community needs are, be it crime or be it relationships with the department. So to kind of look at the SLOs, the next slide, Luke. As I mentioned, it's critical to make sure that they have the vision to understand what it is to be a problem solver, to mentor younger officers, to ensure to address not only the criminal elements that are out there, but to also educate and build community capacity of the community, because the weight of the world sometimes may be on the shoulders of a police officer or a senior P3+1, but the goal is simple, to make sure that the community understands what our role is and what the roles are of the rest of the community to ensure that we address issues from crime to anything in between crime and public relations. Next slide. So this is a map of Hollywood Division. So you can see that we have a number of senior lead officers that are assigned to the basic cars. Those basic cars are developed by the number of calls for service, not by the size of the area, but the calls for service. And as I mentioned, the process to hire the senior lead officers, the interview process, it doesn't happen in one day. It happens over time. And it's that engagement of the commanding officers to ensure that we know exactly what is in the best interest of the community, the department, the divisions, and the entire population that we service, be it daytime or at nighttime. The next slide. Luke alluded to it earlier, our SARA models. And that's to really address issues that are out in the community that have come to our attention, be it from a call for service or the community members, a business owner, schools, anything of that nature. Right now, we have over 311 SARA projects that are open. Now, normally what happens is we try to get those addressed within 90 days. And I'll give a quick example of a SARA project that was started in my division where I live in Northeast Division, where we had some issues with some mental health concerns, homeless, drug activity. Senior lead officers quickly met with the council districts and the community to have a meeting to discuss the issues and concerns to address everything from all 4 corners. So addressing them within all those 4 corners means that we're going to wrap around the community, we're going to wrap around the council offices, we're going to wrap around city entities and nonprofits to address those issues the most humane way we possibly can and problem solve and fix. And I will tell you firsthand, to see the community working with the department, working with the council offices, working with the mayor's office to address this issue, it became a community affair as opposed to a law enforcement concern. And long story short, the issue was addressed, services were provided, and we had a reduction in crime. And that obviously is one of our main goals. That commitment from the senior lead officer isn't something that lasts a week, a month, a day. Going back to Randy Cochran. Randy Cochran worked, even though you're supposed to be on a 410 schedule or a 540 schedule, it was community, community, community. So if we had an issue or concern that happened, the very first person our commanding officer would call was a senior lead officer. Who are we going to be working with? How do we address these issues? So that could be a CPAB member, it could be a neighborhood council, It could be a council office. It could be a neighborhood watch. It could be anything in between there to make sure that we address it holistically and make sure that we communicate properly. Because the thing that we see the most of is a lack of communication in those instant moments that something happens, or the miscommunication that we have to address as soon as we can. The senior lead officer is critical to make sure that the structure is in place, the consistency is in place to address the issues right on. Because as we know, social media can blow things up, but what we need to do is make sure that the messaging is clear, and the senior lead officer is a critical portion of that. Luke, back to you.
So when talking about department community engagement, here are a few things that senior lead officers actually lead as far as department programming. There are a few of these that are actually resonate more with me because I'm directly involved in it than most. But the few that stand out to me, I kind of want to explain to you guys what they are. So when we talk about our Days of Dialogue series, this is a series where we've partnered up with an external organization that puts us in a room with people who might not be in a room with us outside of this organization. And it puts us in there to have a conversation. And these conversations are, of course, rooted in areas that most people don't want to have conversations around. But it puts us in a hot seat, to be quite honest. But that hot seat is necessary. And I say that because this is an opportunity to educate, but also develop mutual understanding and respect towards our community members. The other item I want to talk about are the community forums. Now, the community forums are actually put on by community relations section, and there are about 10 to 12 senior lead officers that work there. They go out in the community, they get folks together in order for us to come and have conversations with, specifically with our Chief of Police, Chief Moore. They do an outstanding job at developing relationships, and especially those groups, those primary groups that have been historically disenfranchised, if you will, and it puts us in a position to have these conversations, and it puts us in an area where our chief can come have conversations with people and then develop that dialogue. The Conscious Conversation series is something that spawned off of the Days of Dialogue series. This is more of a spontaneous type of approach to getting people to having conversations. And what we do in this instance is we take a speaker, we take a microphone, and we go out in the community and we start having conversations with people on the street. We saw dividends in this, especially during the George Floyd protests, where we went out in the community, we went out in the protest, and we invited people back into this building to sit down and have conversations. We've developed relationships with people because of that, and even to this day, we still have folks come to our community events based on that. That read-along program is the last one that I'm going to talk about, and that was developed by a senior lead officer that works at Community Relations Section by the name of Joe Oseguera. Initially, back in 2015, when he brought this program to me, I was a little leery about it because he wanted to go to libraries and read to young kids. I went with him on one session, and then I saw what his idea was. He wanted to engage young people to help change their perception of policing. He wanted our young people to see us in uniform, reading them feel-good stories. And from that point on, I gave him the baton, he ran with it, and he developed this programming across the city. It was amazing. And as a matter of fact, in one of the slides, if I can go back here, in this slide, if you look at, that's Joe Oseguera holding a book up at a library. And we maintained this program for a long time. In fact, this is one of my passions to try and get this program up and running again. So I just want to briefly talk about this picture. This picture was taken back in June 2020, and there was a protest outside. And on the east side, we had this group right here. This was a group of clergy and community leaders that were marching to police headquarters. And to the west, we had a group of about 1,000 people who were steadfast in front of police headquarters, and they were voicing their concerns. When this group of clergy leaders came, they recognized myself, and at the time, my immediate boss, he's Deputy Chief Woodard, then he was a commander. We were standing out front, And some of the clergy members saw us and they called to us to come out into the crowd. It's a tough decision to make when you have a bunch of police officers there. They don't know who these people are. They just see us, they calling our names and they want us to go out to the crowd. We went out to the crowd and immediately one of the clergy members asked to have a meeting with Chief Moore. I didn't know what to do, and at the time, Chief Woodger was like, hold on, let me make some phone calls. Then it went from, no, we don't want to have a meeting with Chief Moore, we want to have a meeting with Mayor Garcetti. So who do we call? We call our SLOs who have relationships with people across the street and who have relationships in this building who are able to put this whole thing together. Our senior lead officers put this meeting together with the approval of Chief Moore so we can have it in his office. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the effectiveness of the SLO, their ability to maintain, develop, cultivate, and sustain relationships with folks to help us in critical incidents have meetings just like this. And Commissioner, you want me to?
Yeah, I'll open you up, Commissioner. So, Luke did a great job of kind of talking about having that constant conversation. When we do have those abilities to bring the families together, the community together, to have a discussion, and to listen and to hear. I can't stress that enough, is to listen and to hear, to figure out what it is we can do to have a conversation to get to the next step. Because as we've said, or I've said in the past, communication is the key. A lot of times it's a breakdown in communication, lack of communication, or misunderstanding communication. So we have to have that constant dialogue. And everything that Luke just mentioned are things that we do to bring together the community the best we can. But we also have to share that throughout the entire department. We have 21 geographic divisions, a lot of senior lead officers from different areas, from South Bureau, Central Bureau, West Bureau, and Valley Bureau. We bring all those people together with Commissioner Calanche to have discussions about what it is that's working, what it is that we're doing, so that we can provide training and have updates. When the pandemic hit, we lost the ability to have our SLO summits. We had our first one in April in 2022. For about 3 years, we had it up at the Police Academy and brought in all of our SLOs, including CSPB, to have a discussion, put together an agenda to talk about different issues and concerns that all the geographic bureaus are seeing, so we can address them the best we possibly can. But the one thing that was stressed more than anything is that building community capacity, making sure the community understands what our role is, how we can educate the community, how we can bring the community together in a safe fashion to address those issues the best we can. Building community capacity is an example of what I used earlier, and Luke has been saying throughout this presentation about educating everyone involved to ensure that we are working holistically, collectively, for a common goal of making the community a safer place. So Commissioner Calanche, I know you wanted to speak a little bit about the summit, what you saw, and some of the things that we're doing moving forward. We are scheduling another SLO summit for this summer, and we'll have another one in the fall to bring everybody together to have these discussions and obviously invite everybody here. Commissioner?
Thank you for allowing me to jump into your presentation. Just wanted to share some of the work that the commission has been doing because it's important to show that we're also leading some of these efforts. The senior lead officers are important assets for the department, as you can see. They lead a lot of dialogue and nurture relationships, and they're awesome problem solvers, right? But what's missing, and we had a senior lead working group, I asked Luke, with the support of Chief Moore, if we could put together a senior lead working group, just to see like what they're doing, what the challenges are, and how we can improve on the excellent work that's already happening. So with the senior lead working group, we just started having dialogue. I asked Sergeant Watkins, find some of like your top senior lead officers, and we would meet. We would meet once a month and discuss what works, the challenges, and one of the things I learned was like how, and I knew this already intuitively because I've been working with senior leads even in Boyle Heights when I actually was very involved with CPAB back in the 90s. So I know the work of senior leads, but they also have challenges where they're out working with the community and yet they're not involved in decision making about like which streets get resurfaced or where resources go. So that was one of the biggest challenges. So we decided that we would start building their capacity to learn how to engage community, because community can ask for those resources, right? It's hard for police officers to call a council office or call the mayor's office and say, day after day to say we need more resources in this community, but the community can do it. CSP is already doing some of this work with community capacity building, so we wanted to build those skills in the senior lead. So typically, the senior lead with their Sarah projects would solve community problems and do it. I mean, like, they're so great at solving a community issue. What they're not also great in is engaging the community beforehand, so that they're working hand in hand with community residents, so that the community members are solving the issues. So therefore, the senior lead may have the same issue recurring over and over versus building capacity of that community to solve their own problems. And it helps to reduce, again, our footprint in these communities where community now can be involved in making their community safer versus relying on the senior lead to solve their problems. So that was kind of the premise of the senior lead working group that led to the summit that we had that Commander Brockway described. The summit was a way, as I'm an community organizer. That's kind of what I've done my whole life. I've done a lot of trainings on community capacity building. Work closely with CSP and Ramona Gardens. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on is how to provide all of the senior leads across the department with new skills, with new capacity building skills. We had a great summit. We had over 200 senior lead officers, super engaged, right? We did, as you can see, we did very engaging activities, so it wasn't just sit there and like listen to speakers, but it was like engaging them in activities to get them to think about teamwork, leadership, and all these things. So that was a summit that happened last year. As a result of the after action report, the after action report basically stated that we wanted to develop community engagement best practices. And I've been working with great amount of a great team with with Chief Marino, Chief Tangarides, Commander Flores, and myself, just to keep this group going. And the goal would be that, so the senior lead working group got integrated. We have Officer Negretti that attends those meetings. We interviewed officers that wanted to be part of that committee. We have civilians that are part of the committee, and the next step is to integrate community members. And the goal there would be to develop community engagement best practices for the department, so that not just senior leads are using community engagement skills, but that department-wide, we have a series of community engagement strategies, so that senior leads to lieutenants, to sergeants, to the officer that's patrolling in their basic car area know about these strategies. Things like community assets, what are the community assets? And not going into a community with the deficit model, like let's see what's wrong in this community and try to fix it. Instead, like, what are the community assets in this community? Where do kids go to play? Who are the leaders in the community? Let's bring those folks together and not interact with our communities from a deficit model, right? So those are all the things that we hope that comes out of the community engagement best practices working group. And then hopefully by fall, we have a set of recommendations to the commission. And of course, we're planning the next few summits. And the summits also fall in line with Mayor Bass's vision for community safety, where if we are training senior leads, if we're training patrol officers in their basic car to understand how we have to engage community, how we have to develop leadership, or not develop, but acknowledge leadership, to understand history of a community before we go in there and try to do some, some activity or some meetings that we understand the dynamics of a community, but also to identify the resources and work with the mayor and the council to identify the resources that are needed to make that community safe, which is a more like grassroots, looking at root cause of safety, right? Why communities are not safe, and not just relying on police officers to make community safer, but relying on all the stakeholders and resources within a community. So where we're going with these training is very much in line with, what Mayor Bass is talking about, and really engaging the assets in a community to improve the community, and officers are just part of it, right? Law enforcement is just one part of it. So that's some of the work that I've been doing with the senior leads, with the team, with the OO team, and with CSP team, just to try to move this along. But yeah, so it's been great, and we hope to make a lot more progress in the next few months.
Thank you, Commissioner Conte. Chief?
In closing, as we heard, senior lead officers are very important to that area commanding officer, not only in community engagement, crime fighting, developing younger officers that are assigned to that basic car, but also in times of need where we need them to work on a specific problem. They're a vital role to this organization, and we couldn't do it without them. So hopefully the commissioners had a good overview of what they do each day. I invite any one of you to come out, go on a ride along with a senior lead officer, because they're very compassionate. They love what they do, and they care so much for this community. We're open for any questions right now.
Thank you, Chief. Well, Chief, before we get to specific questions, you do have two senior leads with you. I'd like to give them an opportunity to come up and briefly discuss with us what their day-to-day life is like as a senior lead officer.
And I think there's also a video, right, that we can do after.
Oh, we have video? Okay. Hello, everybody. First time here. It's an interesting meeting, especially the public comment. So I've been a senior lead officer for 19 years. I was a senior lead officer in Hollywood Division for 11 of those years as an actual divisional senior lead, which is completely different than what I do now. In the last 8 years, I've been in the building as a senior lead officer in charge of public engagement, but also numerous things like managing reserves, and I am currently the citywide volunteer coordinator. So I oversee the whole program of the volunteers, which actually work hand in hand with our senior lead officers. As a senior lead, when I was in Hollywood Division, pretty much it sums it up what these gentlemen said. We were responsible for an area, a basic car, and we were their personal police officer. We did everything we can to be the liaison for them between the community and the police officers, the captain. We would have meetings, schedule different task forces, make sure whatever crime was going on, we'd be on top of it, as well as our basic car, training those young officers how to do community engagement. Obviously, community engagement, I think, starts as a probationer. You're learning how to talk to people. You're learning how to solve those problems. And there's so many different entities in the city that we utilize to solve those problems. It's not just us. And most of these issues that senior lead officers deal with have nothing to do with police work, for the most part. It's not police. It's not criminal. So we actually empower the community to pretty much fight for themselves and get involved, because yes, they're the ones that can actually get stuff done by reaching out to the councils, to the neighborhood councils, to all the good things that are out there. And it's just a great relationship.
Everyone. My name is Officer John Negrete. This year I'll be a 25-year veteran with the department. I've been assigned to the department's Community Safety Partnership Unit for the past 7 years, and I work out of the Pueblo del Rio community. CSP is a unit within the department that was formed in an effort to bridge the gap between problematic areas within the city. For example, I'm assigned to Pueblo del Rio, and it's a way to build trust and build relationships with residents, people that work in the area. Every police officer in CSP has a niche that they bring to the community. My niche, for example, was I started an after-school boxing program for youth in the community. I started a successful after-school boxing program where now I'm taking kids to compete in a collaborative effort with the USA Boxing Commission. My goal is to introduce kids from the community into being involved in the sport, because it's a sport that's not mainstream in our community. It's a sport that if you bring it to kids, it gives them a certain outlet that other sports unfortunately can't do for them. But I've had a lot of success in having these kids turn around. I've even involved our department's cadet program. And the reason I did for that is because I'm a product of our department's cadet program. And I wanted to introduce it to the kids that have never heard of it. So now I have LAPD cadets boxing, and I have kids from the Pueblo del Rio community boxing. And now one kid is motivating another kid to join the program. As a senior lead officer, I'm put in a position where I'm able to do that. I'm able to build that relationship with the kids, and now the parents learn about it. So now I get to grow that relationship with now the parents. And to me, it's an honor, it's a pleasure to be in this position, and I enjoy it very much.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for what you do. I think that you help bridge that gap that so many people in our city talk about is missing, which is trust between the department and the community. And you're at the front lines of that, so I really appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Sobroff whether or not he has any questions or comments.
The whole thing is just hugely uplifting and validating. When communities used to call and say, come meet with us, we have a problem, now what's happening is the community is becoming part of the solution. The department is part of the solution, and there are other groups that are part of the solution. It's very uplifting, and the result is less crime. And you're giving people opportunities to become better people. And personally, I'm forever grateful. This is fantastic, the way this is working.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Commissioner Suthers.
I just want to thank you for your work. I'm very familiar with the SLOW program. I've lived in the city for over 30 years, and I know how communities can really embrace the SLOW and not want them to go away, and they're very, very important. So just thank you for what you do. No questions.
Commissioner Shields.
Yes, thank you again for this great presentation. And I think it's so important that, community engagement isn't just, people preaching to the same choir over and over again. So I'm really heartened to hear about the different programs that you have in place where you're really trying to reach people who otherwise, have a negative view of the department or otherwise would not come to a department-led event. I'm just wondering, just from a day-to-day point of view, in addition to these kind of formal programs of days of dialogue and community forums, how much are SLOWs just really out in the community, walking around, meeting with clergy, meeting with business leaders, meeting with schools and others to get to know the community beyond these formal programs?
Commissioner, never a SLOW, but I know like I indicated earlier, the importance of a SLOW. So they're basic day-to-day operations. As an area commanding officer at Mission, I had 7 SLOWs working for me, or working the area, working their basic car area. And their basic day was they're coming in, looking at crime reports that occurred in their area, returning phone calls of messages that they received over the last 24 hours, looking at the basic car officer's logs to see if there's anything of importance that occurred over that last 24 or 38 hours or 36 hours of when they were off. They love to be out in the field. They love to be out in the community, meeting with people, from a coffee with a cop to just a pop-up, bringing a mobile command post out to an area and just having conversations with people. That's what they strive for. Working on crime issues is also important, but they were never in their office, never sitting at their chairs. They were always out in the field doing work, and that's what they love to do.
Yeah, I will share real quick. I made sergeant a few years ago, and I went to Hollywood Division, where I grew up. And the very first person that I met was Maggie Dillard. And Maggie Dillard came over to tell me how I need to do my job. And what she meant by that was showing me the community I grew up in, things I didn't know, things I needed to be involved in, things I needed to educate my watch on, and to ensure that I had a senior lead officer at every one of my roll calls. And I did. And the reason we did was we had to make sure we had that constant conversation in the community. When I went to CSPB, here's the guys and women I'd go meet with to talk about what it is that we're seeing, what we can do, and from a 30,000-foot level, how we can impact the community in a positive way by having those constant dialogues and conversations and being creative. These people that are senior lead officers, these officers are committed to one thing: they care. They just care. And they care, and they want to make a difference. And I learned a lot from Maggie. I learned a lot from CSPB. And I will tell you, it is not a job that you go looking for. It's a calling. It's 100% a calling. Thank you.
Commissioner Shields, just really quick, one thing we didn't talk about is a survey that we're going to launch pretty soon through the Community Engagement Working Group, which is going to get at like your question. It's asking the senior leads like how much time they spend on certain things, because we want to get a sense like, are they spending a vast amount of their time, I'm making this up, at organizing events or attending meetings, and where there's gaps where like maybe we need to do a little bit more more training on how to engage, you know, young people 15 to 24, right? So we're trying to get a sense of like where they're spending their time, but also like what they're doing really well and where we can add, right? So that'll give us a sense like where they're spending the majority of their time.
And the survey is done, we're just working with ERG on when we can put it out.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields. Commissioner Kalanche, I know you mentioned a video, but looks like Chief Moore wanted to say something.
I can save it for the end of the video. Just want to kind of put a capstone on this when we get a chance.
Sure. You want to go to the video?
I think Media Relations put together something that they sent.
That officer that really shines as a SO is a person that not only engages, but really collaborates to find out what the best solution is for your problem, what we can do for you. My name is Dekron Melkonian. I'm a senior lead officer for Olympic Division. Senior lead officers are really a conduit. They're the conduit between the community and the department. And what we're doing is we are trying to solve people's problems. It's really crucial to have police officers in the community engaging. Go inside the rec center, talk to the park director, see the kids in their programming. Small things we do throughout the day, but that's what it takes being an effective SLO. We'll see police saying, like, oh, okay, something's wrong. There's an issue here. That's why the police are here. That should not be the narrative. The narrative should be, hey, our partners are here in the neighborhood. These guys and gals take care of us. These are important things. We're part of the community. We want to make sure we're growing with the community. And by doing that, we get a really good grasp of what the community needs from us. So we get in front of the problem before it becomes an issue. Prevention is really a key piece of the SLO program. When I look back at my career, and again, 20 plus years as a senior lead by itself, the best part of the job, I think the connections I've made with so many people, not just in the work environment, but community environment.
As a senior lead officer with the Los Angeles Police Department, my role is to help connect the LAPD with the community that we serve. We are in Westlake North neighborhood of Rampart. We're walking the footbeat, getting to know our business owners, getting to know the customers that visit the stores, and just checking in with them to make sure that everything's good on their end. Personally, I think that the core value that most directly relates to my position as a senior lead officer is respect for people. Being out and being present in the community, we get approached with a lot of problems that aren't necessarily police related, but for a good senior lead officer, that doesn't exist. We're always going to be that resource that will point you in the right direction or connect you with the people or agencies that can help solve your problem. Call me, email me, I'll give you a tour of the station. So just being out here, being present, and showing that I'm here, whether they're calling for service or not, makes them feel safe and supported. There were different career paths that I pondered, but I always kept coming back to being a police officer. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, that where I don't have to go home every day or live my life wondering if I made a difference. But with this job, I know that I have.
My name is Officer Richard Lee. I've been at Harbor Division for about 5 years. Ever since I got on the LAPD, this is the division that I wanted to be at. It's where I was born, and it just feels good to be home. People say, hey, respond like it's your family members. Well, this really is my family members out here, so, you know, I love this place. I love the people. It just gives me so much pride to be able to put on this uniform, wear it every day with pride, with dignity. My dad was a police officer. He was a police officer with school PD, and I just remember him walking in with his badge and his long sleeve uniform, and I just used to look at him and just admire him. You know, they always say our dads are our first heroes, and I did. I used to look up to him, and I always knew, hey, I want to be like that guy when I grow up. My favorite part of being a police officer is just getting out there and talking to people, seeing, especially with the little kids, like seeing the kids get so happy and point at you, and when you smile and wave, they wave back, they get so happy. And the best feeling is giving those kids the stickers, and it feels like you gave them $1 million because they just get so happy. We see a lot of things on this job that a lot of human beings don't see, and I mean it's important for us to find out a way to make it so that we're not jaded, we're not worn out, and that we can still do this job effectively and with compassion and with a clear mind. You have you work long hours, but you have a lot of off days, and that gives me the ability to coach some of the kids that live inside of the community. We need to be mentors to these kids. We need to let these kids know that we're here for them. You know, the streets don't have to be here for you. You know, I'm here for you. You know, a lot of men and women that wear this uniform are here for them. And I mean, it's important to get out and give back to the community, especially the community that you patrol.
Thank you. Chief Moore?
Just want to thank for the presentation today. Chief Marino, Chief Tingrides is in the back there. The representation today, the presentation is really what I think is one of those powerful aspects of our policing here in Los Angeles is that we use peer leaders, our senior leads, to guide and mold the values both internal to the organization as well as the collaboration, the community building, if you will, capacity in the areas. I want to thank Commissioner Kalanchi for your work these last year and a half in a sense of helping us refine that community, building that community cohesion. Because you can see that each of the speakers here today and the ones that are on the video, they speak with an enormous amount of heart and a compassion and a drive to succeed. I value them and we value them as commanding officers in our areas because they help keep our officers centered. You know, policing can be a 911 call after call, and it can just be a tasking that really undermines the ability for us to see the importance of community engagement and building community trust in each of those interactions, but also more globally. And so the reality is I look forward to the survey. I also look forward to understanding just how overtaxed we have our senior leads. Prior to the pandemic, there was a study that was done within the department or actually by an outside consultant looking at the department. One aspect was looking at the number of senior leads we have and how woefully underdeployed we are for what a critical linchpin of their work is. Their ability to be here both day and night is not a reality. Their ability to be here 7 days a week is not a reality. And so, but yet the responsibilities that they have of every basic car is a 24/7, 365 engagement. So they do use their influence, they use their position to marshal those on the car as a team effort for this work. But we need to find ways as we move forward. People say, you know, what is the ideal size of the department? Well, it's more than what we have today. And in this work, what Community Safety Partnership has shown with the focus in those 10 sites, using senior leads and other officers with added training, can expand itself across the entire organization when we have time to make that human spirit seen and actually be seen for our heart and not just the valor of the job that they do. So thank you for the presentation today, and thank you for representing a part of our organization that I'm extremely proud of.
I want to echo Chief Moore's words to all of you, and in particular Commissioner Calanche, and her work and her effort throughout the years on SLOs. I know that when she and I joined the commission, that was her passion, and that she was consistent about it and has driven this and has helped with today's presentation. So thank you, Commissioner Calanche, and thank all of you for what you do. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to go into closed session. Resume afterwards.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss agenda items 5A in accordance with Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are now in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
Commission has concluded its work. Item 5A1, officer involved shooting 023-22. Commission on a 5-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 2, tactical debrief, 1 sergeant 1, 2 police officer 3s, and 2 police officer 2s. Drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 3s, 3 police officer 2s. Less lethal use of force in policy, 2 police officer 2s. Lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 3. Item 5A2, officer involved shooting animal 029-22. Commission on a 5-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 3, 2 police officer 2s. Drawing and exhibiting in policy, 1 police officer 3, 1 police officer 2. Lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 2. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. There being no further business before the Board of Police Commissioners, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. See everyone next week. Thank you.